It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Here we are, a week after WWDC. Serenity and Rene are back from San Francisco. Ihnatko's in Boston, and we're going to analyze the new iOS 9, the new OS X El Capitan. We're going to talk about Watch OS. A lot to talk about. The details coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 459, recorded Tuesday, June 16th, 2015. All the Dynos. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by NatureBox. NatureBox ships tasty and guilt-free snacks right to your door with over 100 flavors to choose from, like mini Belgian waffles. You'll never get bored of snacking again. Try NatureBox at naturebox.com/twit. That's naturebox.com/twit. And by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for a simple payment solution, check out Braintree. With one simple integration, you can offer your customers every way to pay, period. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/MacBreak. And by lynda.com, the online learning platform with over 3,000 on-demand video courses to help you strengthen your business, technology, and creative skills. For a free 10-day trial, visit lynda.com/MacBreak. That's LYNDA.com/MacBreak. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Apple. Ihnatko is here from the Chicago Sun-Times. And it's so nice to start my day looking into your shining, smiling 8-bit graphics. Welcome.
I was considering going 6-bit, but I put an extra 2 bits in there just for you, Leo.
Those are 10 bits. How nice.
I never counted them, but there's just enough. Not too many, not too few. We focus group the hell out of this.
Also with us, of course, as always, Rene Ritchie from imore.com. Good to see you, Rene.
I've returned from WWDC, Leo.
You're back in Montreal.
I am, but I have my tasteful WWDC jacket to keep.
Oh, let me see. That's pretty. That's pretty.
Yeah, they did a good. It is in San Francisco. SF, not the compact version either. This is the full version. Boy, can't do stuff on camera.
And that's a gimme, right? You don't have to buy that. They give you that.
Well, if you get the developer ticket, you get it. So
yeah, to say that it's free wouldn't really be fair because the ticket's expensive.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Also here,
but it's warm.
Go ahead. It's warm. Is it toasty?
Warm, yes.
Even Montreal warm.
I was wearing it because it's raining today, and it's actually water. It's not like one of the cloth ones. This is like a water slick or something. They've upgraded.
Yeah, it's a little rubbery, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I have one like that. Yeah, I like those.
They're really nice.
Yeah. And also back from WWDC and also from iMore, Serenity Caldwell in her Boston digs. Hello, Serenity.
Hi, Leo. How are you doing?
Good to see you. What is that license plate? In your new office, I might add. What is that license?
In my new office.
Yeah, what is that license plate?
That says R2D2N8. It was made by a friend of mine who I skate with.
Is his name Nate?
No, my skater name is R2D2 Nate. So
Oh.
she made me an R2D2 plate. Which is not legal for my car because Massachusetts doesn't let you have numbers and letters interspersed like that.
Oh.
But it's still pretty cool.
Does she work in a prison? How could she?
She works at the RMV.
Oh, okay. I don't know. It seems like you probably shouldn't be able to buy license plate
Maybe we should
makers.
edit that part out just in case.
Oh, lordy. We also want to mention as we begin the show that the new website is up. So if you're going or you're watching us on our new website, twit.tv/live, that's why it looks different. And I invite everybody watching to bang on it as hard as possible. I just got a message from our engineers at Four Kitchens who designed and did the under the hood stuff on the site. They really built a beautiful site. They're watching and they have their hands on the dynos, ready to turn them up. There literally is a dial that they can turn up, right? There's a dyno dial.
Regular traffic, ridiculous traffic.
I hope it's an actual mechanical dial that they've hooked up with an Arduino or something.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
There's a point at which you need to like put on rubber gloves and to put your both hands on this big like leaf switch and just slam it down.
It's staying very responsive despite the fact that people are hitting it. I'm told by our engineers that actually Mac Real said it gets faster the more people visit it because we're using a Redis cache, which is apparently very the more it'll cache, it aggressively caches it as you load the pages, and it's faster than the Node.js front end, which is running at Heroku. So cache away. You're speeding us up as you visit. The site actually gets faster. Is that weird or what?
Machine learning.
Didn't even know that was possible. It's an amazing thing. The other thing about the site that's important to us was it's very mobile responsive. It fits very nicely on any size screen. They really did a nice job of that. And so we invite you to visit it on your iPad and your iPhone and all your other devices and see how it looks to you. Let's see. We're kind of in a WWDC lull now, right? At the aftermath.
A hangover?
No, it's even better the week after because, like, on Tuesday, we're all just, we are literally in the afterglow. It's like, oh my God, can you imagine how cool the iPad's going to be in October? We get multiple apps. And then a week later, we're like, having thought about it a little bit more, now there's new concerns that come up as we discover that there's a cache condition that has not been addressed, at least not in the materials that I've been privy to, which basically you have to pay for your enthusiasm last week by saying, I'm still quite objective.
So let's go back. Now that the reality distortion field, a little of the air has let out of it. Let's go back and take a look at it and think about what we have learned here.
In hindsight, Drake was amazing.
Love that Drake. Well, for instance, I think the biggest thing everybody's talking about is Apple TV. What they didn't mention it at all. They did about 30 seconds on HomeKit. What does that mean, Rene? Is Apple TV still coming?
I always take issue with the word delayed if Apple hasn't announced anything. Maybe you could say punted. The Apple TV is really curious because inside America, there seems to be this real desire to have content, to have live TV, to have sports. And maybe there's a group of people who believes that the absolute bottom line includes the content and the box alone is not enough. Internationally, we never get the content that you enjoy in America. We don't have HBO now still. So to us, the box is the bottom line. And it seems very frustrating that we have to wait just for American content deals. But if you want to make a box that can compete for input one on American televisions, then those deals are suddenly important.
Right.
So those deals, there was indications those deals hadn't been signed yet. So probably rather than present just a box or just a box and an SDK, a decision was made to wait and hopefully, because Apple's an incredibly patient company, so wait and maybe hopefully wait till the fall when they have those deals signed.
It's too bad though. I mean, the iPad Air 2. I've been saying that it's suspiciously overpowered for what it could do in the fall of 2014, but you could see that they were teeing it up for what they knew was going to come at some point next year, or maybe a year and 6 months at the very latest. I just think it's too bad that Apple is really sending a really clear message: don't buy an Apple TV. We're not giving you any reason whatsoever to buy an Apple TV. You'd be a fool to buy an Apple TV, not because they're going to abandon it. No one thinks that's true, but everybody knows that there's going to be new faster hardware, and whatever they do next is almost certainly going to require new hardware. So it's just I don't have enough understanding of how the development of that is working to know what's going on. I wish I did, because it just seems so weird to simply not say not to simply say we're going to put in a new everything's going to be faster on this. We have a new CPU. We've got some other new hardware that iFixit is going to discover, but we're not going to announce. I just don't know why they're just simply essentially saying we don't care until we tell you that we do care.
Do you think it's interesting because there's an argument to be made that 4K television isn't that compelling yet because it's got single digit adoption, and broadband really isn't fast enough in enough places to make iTunes 4K make sense. If there is an SDK, people will play Candy Crush on their TV, but as we saw from the Xbox and PS4 announcements, maybe games alone aren't compelling enough. So I can understand, because I have a background in marketing, how you'd really want to be able to say, look, this is all your TV dreams come true. And by the way, here's a box that makes it work. But for those of us who just want the box, like Andy says, super frustrating.
Is it relevant or important that Sony at E3 yesterday announced they're going to do a la carte TV on the PlayStation? This is PlayStation President, Group CEO Andrew House. Starting in July, we'll be offering an a la carte channel or a la carte channels nationwide, and will be the first pay TV service to allow users to subscribe to individual channels without the purchase of a multi-channel bundle. Now, I imagine that the PlayStation 4 is probably not, well, I don't know. I mean, there's certainly millions of them.
But this is exactly like what Apple would have announced last year if they simply decided that we don't care about releasing a a la carte package when we think it's ready. We just want to make sure it's out right now, because it's certainly good news. But you look at what's going to be available at launch, and what is it? It's a soccer network and a brand new channel that has never existed before with machinima content, and that's not going to get people excited about.
It's
about
not
signing
full
up for this.
featured.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and it's expensive.
It's not-
$70 a month for the elite version of Play. This is called Vue, VUE. And it's only available in Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, Philadelphia, and San Francisco.
Yeah.
And 3 channels to start for $70 a month.
Videotron for the last 10 years has been doing, when I first got it, it was $30 for 30 channels a la carte.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's quirky Quebec, business practices, but though there are pre-existing models for this stuff.
They will have Showtime at $11 a month. But a lot of people have Showtime app. Of course, I guess you have to have a cable company subscription. So that's the point.
So messy.
Yeah.
You also got to reflect on the fact that anything that Sony offers through their network is almost certainly going to be offered to Apple TV, to Roku, to everything else. Remember how excited that we all were when HBO Now came to Apple TV, and then of course was it like 2.5 weeks later when it was offered for, as a separate subscription option for pretty much everything else.
So yeah, presumably, of course, now Sony's in the business, so they're talking to their friends. Presumably, though, anything Sony could do, anybody else could do. So this just makes it more likely to happen sooner.
It's just another horse in the race.
Yeah. Nothing for Apple to worry about, right?
Not that I really think about.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, this is the only thing that Apple needs to worry about is getting the box out there, hopefully by the end of this year, because at a certain point, even the only reason I have an Apple TV and not a Roku at this point is AirPlay and now HomeKit functionality. But come iOS 9, that extra HomeKit functionality using the Apple TV as a remote server, that doesn't matter. So they really need to figure out their deal with the box.
Yeah.
But for now, I mean, it's just another shot off the bow. Like it's nothing different than Roku. It's nothing different than Slingbox. It's nothing different than any of the other opportunities for a la carte TV.
It's also interesting to wonder if people have allegiance to the box they already have. I mean, are people really addicted to having a Roku, or is it just simply the box they already have? And so long as they can get the channels and the software that come along on it, will they ever be tempted to switch to an Apple TV or vice versa? I mean, it's one of the opportunities that Sony and Microsoft have, because so many of these families that do get most of their entertainment through the biggest screen in the house, they've already got the box in place. If they can simply push updates to it and find a way to take a percentage off of all those pay channels, that's just gravy for them. But is there any incentive for them to do what I imagine Apple would do, which is to enhance the box and make the box enhance every other Apple device that you have on your network? So,
Integration play.
yeah.
Do we have a time frame? I mean, I guess it's all just kind of waiting on the negotiations.
Yeah. The fall is their next topic. Like they have windows. So WWDC was a window. September, October is the next window.
Ah, that's interesting. So even if they had it next month, they wouldn't likely do it until there was a window.
Yeah, it feels like an event. Like you have to go up there and show off the new box and explain the new cable, and you want the people on stage and you want the media attention, and that means it's an event. And I can't remember the last time Apple had an event in July or August.
Yeah.
No, I honestly feel, I mean, the two like well-timed areas would be right at the start of upfronts, which is sort of right around this time frame, and right at the start of the fall TV season. Granted, we're less dependent on seasons than we used to be, but I can definitely see an Apple TV event taking the place of, say, the Apple Watch event last year, because obviously they're not going to release new Apple Watch hardware in September. That's not going to happen. But that October slot that was used for the iPad and the Apple Watch or the iPhone and the Apple Watch, that could be very easily used for the iPhone and also the Apple TV. And hey, look at how the Apple TV helps your iPhone and interconnects with your iPhone and also television. So exciting. But they've got Apple Music launching at the end of June. I think that's probably the bare minimum that we're going to see in the summer. They're too busy prepping everything that's going to launch in September, all of the iOS, OS 10, et cetera, new iPhones, all the stuff.
Yeah, and maybe that's also the reason why they didn't give the HomeKit the big magic show last week too. Because if what we all have been presuming is true, that HomeKit and the new Apple TV will just elevate HomeKit to something way beyond what it can be right now, you want to give the whole magic show when you have the whole stage ready to go. As handy as it would have been to simply say, here's what you can do with HomeKit right now with lots of products that just launched last week. So. Interesting. I too have been trying to figure out when would they launch a new Apple TV with HomeKit, and would they try to do the troika of Apple TV, HomeKit, and a new subscription service, and then make it sort of into their own sort of TV event? Would it sort of be a piggyback between they would do the iPhone event and then also do Apple TV as another iOS device and sort of sister it that way? And if there really is going to be an iPad Pro, I think it would be an event sort of on the same scale of launching Apple Watch, because it would be the biggest iPad news since iPad 1.0. It's nothing like introducing the iPad mini. This would be a really emphatic statement saying that do not buy any of these $500 Windows tablets that are kind of iPad-like. Buy our new $649 iPad Pro instead. And they would want to have lots of room around that announcement so that they could really prosecute the case they're making completely.
It's going to be a good fall.
Going to be a really interesting fall.
Busy fall.
I got money taped to the bottom of my desk for a couple of trips to San Francisco.
Likewise.
Maybe we can carpool. We'll rent an RV.
Would you really, though? Wouldn't you want to separate it out from the iPhone announcement? I mean, that's going to, well, I guess it's a 6S.
September and October, they did the Apple Watch with the iPhone this year. There's no more iPod really stuff to announce. So an iPhone and an Apple TV could be a good bundle. And then you do the new Mac stuff and iPad Pro in October.
iPad Pro is going to be a lot to talk about too, isn't it?
Yeah, like maybe one event at Yerba Buena, one event at Town Hall.
Okay. Okay. Should people not buy an Apple TV today? They did drop the price.
Nope.
No point. Unless you need absolutely AirPlay support and you don't have AirPlay in your house. You're basically buying a $69 AirPlay dongle.
That's true.
Yeah.
I just bought one for the bedroom, so I'm not going to say.
I needed one for the presentation I was giving at the Yosemite conference, because the version I had could not do point-to-point AirPlay without a base station in the middle, and that's the only way I could get it to drive from the new MacBook, because I didn't have a USB 3.0 video dongle yet. And even then, I decided I would much rather spend $30 for an HDMI to VGA adapter and bring my own Wi-Fi base station to have a private network at the podium than throw away $70 for a piece of hardware that might have a shelf life of about 3 months.
Yeah. Let's take a break. We'll come back and talk about watches and privacy. El Capitan.
Do you say privacy or privacy?
Privacy. Privacy reminds me of the privy, and I don't want to say privacy. I want to say privacy. Does most of our audience say privacy? They probably do, huh? What do you say in Canada?
Privacy.
Thank God.
Vitamins, privacy, dancing, not dancing.
Aluminum.
Although it breaks my heart, Leo, every time I don't say aluminium.
Just fun to say.
Extra use for everybody.
You have a little more time with 4K, because 4K TVs haven't really taken off, but they're gonna this fall probably. This would be a good time. Fall would be a good time.
I think whatever TV people already has to die before they replace it with a 4K.
Nowadays, yeah.
I haven't spoken to anybody who has said that I have a perfectly good TV. I'm so eager to switch it out, unless they have a crappy TV in their bedroom and they want to move like the 50-inch in there and have an excuse to buy a new one.
Have you, Serenity and Rene, downloaded iOS 9 and El Capitan?
Mayhap.
Possibly.
Possibly. Okay. Well.
I may have possibly destroyed both of my devices.
Oh, really?
My main production devices.
I can actually
I've been
talk
doing
about
it for the
El Cap.
last. Yeah, you can. That's true.
I can talk about El Cap. My embargo ended yesterday.
Yay. All right. Details coming right after this word. It's snack time. Who wants lemon tea biscuits? Anybody? Lemon tea.
You sent me some of those. They're delicious.
They are good, aren't they? We're talking Nature
need to
Box.
try Nature Box.
What?
I get to try them. I know.
Nature Box to Ms. Caldwell. Stat. You would like these, and especially because, it's important to keep your strength during long bouts of roller derby. R2D2nator. needs to have these honeycomb sunflower kernels.
Yum.
Yum. We know sunflowers are really, sunflower seeds are really good for a lot of things. These are non-GMO sunflower kernels. You know what's in these? I love them. Nothing. Sugar, sunflower, oil, honey, and salt. Little maltodextrin to give it that. This is not, there's never any HFCs, any high fructose corn syrup, never any artificial colors or flavors or any of that stuff. Nature Box makes great snacks, nutritionist approved, so much better than going to the snack machine. And they'll ship them right to you on a monthly subscription. You got to love that. You know you're going to snack. So why feel bad afterwards? Why not feel good? Say, I had a delicious probiotic power mix for my snack today. And these are always resealable bags, too, which is nice. You don't feel like you have to eat the whole thing. Best of all, they taste phenomenal. How about strawberry lemonade fruit stars? Or sweet and salty nut medley? And, of course, you could tailor your box to dietary needs. Sweet, savory, and spicy. White truffle popcorn. Wow. These are so good. Look, I got a special deal for you. You can get your special free trial. You just pay $2 for shipping from naturebox.com/twit. So you get an idea of what you're in for. And, by the way, while you're there, browse around. Look at the menu. They've got gluten-free, they've got vegan, they got snacks for everybody. Boy, that probiotic stuff's good. I don't even know what probiotic is, but boy, is that good.
If it tastes like this, I'm in.
I'm in. I don't need to know what that means. Naturebox.com/twit for your free trial. Try it today. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. We are snacking. We're just Serenity Caldwell and Rene Ritchie are here from imore.com. Also, of course, Mr. Andy Ihnatko. So you had El Capitan, but you were embargoed till yesterday?
Yeah, they had the, you can't call them reviews, first looks yesterday. So I got to spend about a week going through it and noting down some feelings and some thoughts and sharing them with the universe.
So your first look is now at imore.com. There it is.
Yes, sir.
People say our images are too big. That fills us great. See, we're in a visual world. I like it.
I know. Me too.
I want to see.
Go big or go Kindle.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Pictures, baby. And then there's text underneath that.
Sure,
Lots
if you
of
really
text.
want it.
So what do you, first of all, do you agree that this is the kind of a Snow Leopardy update? That it's a.
I mean, it's right in the name, and kudos because Serenity clued into that really early on. That El Capitan is part of Yosemite, so it's like it's like what Syracuse's famous cat modifier cat, but now it's landmark modifier landmark.
And that means that it's focused on not new features but performance and reliability and security.
Yeah,
however,
I mean those are pretty big features. It's just it's easier to say that we're not giving you the full reign of new features.
I think
Well, I'd say the argument there is that all of these features are enhancements of previous features. Notes is not new, Notes is better. Split view is not new, split view is new, but split view is building upon mission control and full screen apps, which is something that was introduced in Lion. And mission control itself has gotten some improvements in how it handles spaces and things like that. The cursor is definitely not new, but the cursor shake is a nice improvement. And in fact, I think something brought back from eons ago.
Was it an Apple thing or was it a third party?
I think it was a third party. The OS 7 preference pane slow loader. I don't even know what you call those anymore. Plugins. I just remember them loading. Yeah, extensions. I just remember them loading on my Mac when I was like, why won't my Mac turn on? I want to play Oregon Trail.
You really you really need this on a 5K display. These bigger displays we use.
I
lose the cursor all the time. Actually, I made my cursor bigger so I could see it. But the shake is probably better than that.
I love Phil Schiller's comment on the talk show where he said he went to the iMac and couldn't find the cursor, started shaking and realizing it wasn't on El Cap. And how frustrating it had become.
No. Yeah, Spotlight's been improved. It's not new. It's just it's gained some of the features that we've seen on Siri for years. All of search across the platform. The mail features aren't new. They're originally introduced in iOS. Now they've been brought over. So it's really sort of a hyper polishing, which I think is actually really funny when they I was clued into the El Cap name in part because when we sat down at the keynote, I looked at I always like to look at the backdrop picture, what they're choosing for that year on the IMAX, and I'm like, that's still Yosemite.
Yeah.
That's El Capitan. But El Cap is a very difficult mountain, or really a granite wall to surmount. It kills people every year from trying to climb up without adequate experience. It's a multi-day climb. I think it's actually kind of ballsy for Apple to be like, yes, for our stability release, we are going to name it after one of the scariest mountains in Yosemite. Basically being like, yes, we know there are bugs. We are surmounting these bugs, and we are going to climb up and be victorious on the peak. It's not even a peak. The top of El Capitan, the summit of El Capitan.
Summit of the monolith.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is.
Yeah, you wonder if they're going to like just on the launch day for this new operating system, they're going to basically go to every single camp of someone who's considering climbing, buy them lots of beers, keep them from climbing, because the last thing you want to see is
a death
tragedy.
on
Tragedy on El Capitan.
Yeah,
there are no Heineken served at El Capitan.
Well, thankfully, I think OS 10 will be released late enough in the year that El Cap climbing isn't really something that you do. Like I think mid to late October might be right on the edge of people trying to climb granite-facing mountain. I don't know.
We're talking about people who are willing to say, here's a sheer wall of granite that's thousands of millions of miles up in the air. There is never a safe time to do it. You're talking about people who need to be convinced to stay on the ground.
Let's talk about Metal. That's like DirectX for the Mac. Apple has traditionally struggled with its OpenGL drivers. Those were that was the technology you'd use prior to Metal to make gaming happen on a Macintosh. Metal is really sounds like it's a lot faster.
Metal's awesome. It debuted on iOS 8 last year. It's a way, to quote unquote write more directly towards the Metal of the graphics processing unit, the GPU. Metal on the Mac is even cooler, and Metal this year in general is even cooler because Apple's not only addressing OpenGL or sidestepping in a way OpenGL, but they're folding in OpenCL, which was an Apple proposed standard for open compute language that let you use basically the graphics processing unit for general purpose computing. They're tying all that together into a single unified API, and then they put core animation and core graphics on top of it. So if you already followed best practices, you get a lot of this performance boosting for free, which is one of the best things developers hear every conference.
Yeah. So if you used core graphics, you'll get Metal.
You get all the acceleration that Metal provides.
Nice.
And it's not just exciting for gamers. I mean, definitely it's going to be really, really, a bonus, especially they've got a lot of major game design studios committed to releasing titles using Metal, which is fantastic, but development should be great. I mean, you looked at the demos that Adobe was doing on the DevDev stage. They did a much more comprehensive demo, I think, during the State of the Union.
I wish they'd showed Adobe instead of this really silly game.
The game isn't, I mean,
wasn't even a challenging
but
game.
It wasn't something that really like developers were like, wow, those graphics, because you've been
Unless
able
you
to
can count
mostly
draw calls, doesn't impress you.
Yeah, exactly. But when it comes to development, the numbers and stats that they were reeling off about how much faster Adobe's draw calls are getting as a result in the behind the scenes development. And I know Brianna Wu, who's a game developer, wrote for us on iMore about she's super excited about the possibilities of maybe being able to work in Unreal Engine 4 and not having to go over to Windows because Windows will just render it faster.
She was saying 500% improvement in rendering.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's an important point because a lot of developers, they don't have to do a lot of things differently. If they're using Unreal, if they're using one of the existing engines, those engines are going to fold in Metal. So you will get the ability to write to Metal literally by using the engine you're already using, and that's a huge time saver for them.
When you, somebody in the chat room saying, what do they keep saying, writing to the Metal? Metal is the term, of course, but what does that mean, writing to the Metal?
The actual hardware, because you have hardware interfaces, then you have all these years of interface layers. Basically, OpenGL is the open graphics language, and that's what you use to do shaders and draw calls, and basically try to program the card to do what you want it to do. And it was incredibly complicated. And if you look at the diagrams, it's an incredibly thick layer filled with a lot of things because it's an open standard. And writing to the Metal means you're trying to sidestep as much as possible. You're not using lower level languages. So you are using lower level languages, not abstract languages, not higher level languages. And you're trying to write as directly to that hardware as possible so you can get the most performance out of it as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Will something like Unity take advantage of this?
Looks like.
So these third-party game design tools that give you cross-platform support, you can write for Unity and run on Windows and Mac.
Which is kind of the thing, because people were complaining immediately that Apple said this, like, oh, what about Vulkan? What about Direct? It doesn't matter. It's like CarPlay and Android Auto. You should not have to care what the platform supports. The platform shouldn't have to put up with an open standard that's okay for everybody but great for nobody. Make great platform-specific solutions and then have that layer like Unreal and like Unity sitting on top that handles all the heavy lifting. Then as a gamer, I don't care what it's written in. And as a developer, you don't care what the engine supports. Your job is making great games, and it makes, I think, everyone's lives better.
Yeah. Yeah. Very exciting.
Super exciting.
What else are we looking forward to?
In that same section there, Leo, that was super exciting, and developers really liked it too, is there's something called UI Collection View in iOS, which lets you make more complicated layouts more easily. And the Mac had a version, but now they've ported the iOS version, UI Collection View, to the Mac. It's now NS Collection View. There's also TextKit support, and there is Stack View. So they made it just much easier to make much higher quality Mac interfaces for developers. And I think that's, as a result of that, we're going to see sort of like the easy way that you made, I don't want to say easy because I'm not a developer and it sounds dumb to say it, but the better way of making apps now possible on the Mac as well, with full text support, with all that new font stuff.
Do you feel like that might indicate a broader variety of resolutions on the Mac too? In other words, one of the reasons that came out on iOS first is because you wanted to be able to flow stuff. You wanted to make it easier to format stuff. I mean, in a way, like they basically, and I don't know this for sure, but my understanding is they didn't want to have to load WebKit the entire WebKit stack just to render a bunch of text, because that's not efficient. And especially on the Apple Watch doesn't even have WebKit on it. So TextKit was a way to actually render that text directly in the UI and not have to load WebKit to work as an interface. And I might be getting the details of it wrong, but it just makes text rendering not only typographically more beautiful, but much more efficient for lower end hardware, especially. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be a common thread running through a lot of these announcements that I've been seeing WWDC, where if Apple can't get control over CPU upgrades because they're beholden to Intel, they can sort of give themselves CPU upgrades by introducing all of these little tweaks to the operating system that allow you to get more battery life without a CPU upgrade, to get more speed, or not just more actual speed, but more perceived speed through faster rendering. So it's going to be interesting to see what the next generation of CPU hardware is going to be, if Apple can now downplay that they don't necessarily have CPUs that have been released 2 months ago, but they can simply point at performance and simply say, here is how fast our browser runs, here is how fast our $1,000 notebook runs compared to something that costs $300 or $400 more on another platform.
Boy, for a first look, this is very complete, I gotta say. It's really not, I mean, an operating system review, of course, John Syracuse has set the standard. I don't know who's going to do it for Ars Technica this year, since John's retiring.
And credit to Serenity for editing that. She made it way better than it started off.
This is not a full review, I guess, but boy, it sure looks like it. I mean,
it's just an overview of the features, honestly. I mean, and we haven't really, we dug in a little bit right after the conference about little features you may have missed during the keynote. But there's so many like little tweaks and little improvements. Especially, I think that it'll take us some time using the operating system to really get the as opposed to something like Lion or Mavericks or Yosemite, where the design changes are kind of right in your face and everything is new and everything is exciting. With something like El Capitan, I feel like it's going to take us a couple weeks, even a month, getting used to the final version, not just the betas, to really feel how much it improves older Macs and how much this I keep on wanting to say Siri, the Spotlight improvements help us just working day to day on our Macs.
What
also,
about
Find My Friends on the Mac? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Find My Friends on the Mac.
Yeah, it's a notification widget now.
The app that no one used on the iPhone now is available on the Macintosh.
Yeah. They built it into messages though. So what I found, like at WWDC, it was super easy if you were trying to, if you were on different parts of town and you wanted to quickly meet up for a drink or a meal, you would just hit that share for an hour or share for a day, and you wouldn't have to worry about your location always being shared, but you could easily find each other because maps would give you precise walking directions to where that person was. And I've been lost before trying to find somebody, and it was way better now.
Security, some significant changes here.
It is huge. So, and it was actually pretty controversial, especially amongst security people. Because what Apple, this was sort of leaked as the code name rootless, and they've got a much more Microsoftian name now, like system integrity, something or other, enhancement, enforcement. And what it does is it's
System
a real
integrity protection.
So it's a problem though, because you probably know this from the radio show, Leo. People buy a Mac, they set it up, and they're just running as
They
administrator.
don't modify anything. Yeah.
And that's the way it is. And getting them to move away requires you explaining how user accounts work, getting them to set up a new account, setting up a standard. So what SIP does is it sort of brings the iOS model over to the Mac, not completely, because you can still boot into a full root access mode if you really want to. There's a little toggle you have to set, and you can boot into it. But what it does is it prevents the sort of escalation attacks that we've seen very recently, the last few weeks on the Mac, where someone manages to get root access and then manages to escalate that on your machine and install basically persistent malware. And this makes a very proactive actually defense against that kind of stuff. But people who are used to running Homebrew or running Kext or other kind of extensions, they're probably not as happy with it.
So I can't use Brew anymore?
It's not exactly clear what happens. Some people want both the benefits of this and the freedom to run both, and it looks like you have to turn this off to do that kind of stuff, and then they're upset that they don't get the protection anymore. But I think, it's one of those things where it's built by the same team that did sandboxing and gatekeeping and a lot of the other stuff. It's really meant to protect people who don't know any better about these kinds of things.
Now, if you're using Brew, I guess the presumption is you know what you're doing. And
it's like if you jailbreak. If you break the root jail, the assumption is you're a higher level user who's taking that responsibility onto themselves.
Yeah. A lot of us use Macs because we have Unix under the hood and we have a command line and we can do all this stuff. And those people are always very nervous as Apple slowly inches towards iOS. Remember how upset I was about the App Store, but that hasn't worked. It turned out to be any problem at all. And in fact, a good choice in security when the protection against third-party app installs, site installs.
Most people love their Macs, Leo. The same people who are working at Apple are just like you and me.
Yeah,
they love their Macs. They want them to be Macs.
And presumably they use them like we hardcore folks with the command line and all that stuff.
I can neither confirm nor deny that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, so I'm hoping. Don't take away my bash shell.
Well, we look at I don't know if the WSJ article is on our docket to talk about, but you look at things like that. On one hand, you have people saying, "Oh, Apple should get rid of the Mac brand," and iOS development can happen on iOS. To which I'm kind of like, okay, we go back to the Steve Jobs analogy of cars and trucks and things like that. Developers are gonna want trucks. I'm sorry. That's just how it works. I really like the iPad, and I am super, super excited for the features that the iPad is going to get in iOS 9. I think it'll make it a lot easier for me to write on it, which I think is really cool. And maybe do basic coding. But when it comes to the hardcore stuff, when it comes to Xcode, I wouldn't want to do Xcode on a touchscreen device. I'm sorry. I just wouldn't. And that might be just me personally. There might be other developers who feel otherwise, but there's something about having multiple screens and being able to have multiple input devices. And I think Apple is very acutely aware of this, very much, the right device for the right task for the right space. And I see that as they're sort of improving, as they're putting the improvements to El Capitan, as they're putting the improvements to iOS 9, each improvement is very much designed for even though there are things that cross over, they're very much designed for the machine that they're being implemented upon.
This is what I want my Mac to look like right here. Yeah. And if it doesn't, no, you're not seeing it. There you go. Yeah. If it doesn't do that, then I ain't happy.
Yeah. Unix 3 POSIX for the win.
No, I think actually, but what you'll do is you'll lose people to Linux and stuff. But I think the beauty of the Mac is you get a real operating system that's designed for normal people, plus this geeky stuff under the hood.
Yeah, nobody has, even Apple has yet to make the case that you can use a tablet to replace an entire desktop. Even Microsoft has made Windows tablets, and they have not been able to successfully make the case that a tablet is a replacement for something that's configured like a laptop or a desktop. And you also figure that it's silly to think of Apple chloroforming a business that is a part of their business that's not collapsing, it's growing. if anything. And also, you remember that Apple's whole success is about building a domed environment that is a really great place to live. And you don't want to send somebody outside the dome to get a desktop or a laptop. Even if they did not believe in laptops, even if they did not believe in desktops, even if they weren't as excited about Mac OS as everyone in this conversation is, I don't think that they would simply say we're making a lot of money with this, but let's let Microsoft and even Linux get the thin end of that wedge hammered underneath the experience, because they can't make they can't make a desktop experience that they don't control work as well with the iPhone, with the iPad, with the watch as they can if they control the whole thing. That's the great beauty of buying Apple everything. It all works great together.
And go ahead.
There is another line to this, and that is people like I'm going to butcher his last name, Zdarsky, who we talked about previously with backdoors. Yeah. They're worried that, and I hope I'm not misquoting him, but he linked to some articles that I found really interesting. They're worried that by locking all this stuff down, by making a trusted boot chain the way there's on iOS, that they lose the ability to carefully monitor their system and see what's happening if there is a pre-existing device. So that is absolutely something really important that has to be considered.
But you'll be able to turn rootless off, right? I mean, that's the main.
Yeah, and again, it looks like you can set a flag and reboot into a single user mode that does that. But this is only the beta, so we're going to have to wait and see how it might be even easier to do or harder to do when the final comes out.
Because otherwise, I can't install links, and it's very important to me that our website look good. As you can see, it does, by the way, on a desktop.
You sent me a message about that in Elm, Leo. I appreciate it.
But Apple has a really great track record with this. Remember how I think that people were right to be at least concerned when Apple announced that they're going to basically hardwire security into software installs and app installs, thinking that, well, now they have the ability to simply lock out any app that doesn't come in through the App Store. But they implemented it in the most user positive way possible. They simply said that the safest way to operate this Mac is to never install any app that didn't come from a trusted source. We will give you a couple of options, including ask first and don't even care about it. And even if in a later update, they did something that was really brilliant, which is to say they knew that the only time that people are going to butt heads with this feature is when they've downloaded a brand new app off a source that's not in the App Store, and they get the warning saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't let you run this because it's not a signed app." And then that's what causes people to go into system preferences, turn off the security feature, launch that app, and then forget they've turned that feature off. It has that feature that simply says, if you go into preferences, there'll be a button that says, "Hi, you tried to launch Handbrake. If you click this button, we will let you launch this app without changing the rest of the settings. We'll simply grandfather this one in." So I think that Apple won't make a change like that makes the Mac harder to use or less successful.
And there's there's also the app transport security system where they want to use TLS 1.2, but TLS 1.2 is not great, so it's forward moving. It's saying or better, and it's opening up for potentially better replacements for that going forward. So that if you're not familiar with that, they want when you connect an app to a web backend, they want that connection to be secure. And the current standard is TLS 1.2, but it's going to keep pushing for best practices. Whenever that standard is updated, it's going to try and make sure that you use the most updated version of that standard, which I think is a clever way of doing it too.
I'm sorry, I'm just browsing our site and links. It looks so good. Actually,
do you want to play a game?
I like the command line. I really do hope that they
How's your Archie support?
I don't. For instance, I don't want to go into single user mode just so I can use Brew.
I still have a CPM computer that I do a lot of my browsing with.
Yeah.
I'd be disappointed if.
Yeah, it's got to have links capability.
Yep.
All right, moving on. Let me go back to a real browser. Oh, much better.
He went to Chrome.
Oh.
Ouch.
Modern browser.
Modern browser. You say you prefer Safari to Chrome, and you like the new Safari on
I like it because Chrome has a lot of Chrome for me, at least. Like I find the tabs on the way the whole thing is rendered has a lot of border, and I like the way that they've been making the design just very minimal.
Chrome has never worked well on the Macs either. It's always been a kind of a bit of a hog.
Battery drain, especially on that MacBook, Leo. I forget what it is, but it's an enormous. I stopped running. I think I uninstalled it just on the MacBook because the battery hit was tremendous.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. It depends on whether you're running whether you've got it set up to basically say any Flash, any comers, by all means run it. I use Chrome as my default browser on my MacBook Pro 13-inch, and to me, it became a choice between, I find it a lot more stable than Safari, and I'm willing to trade off what to me is not a major amount of battery life in exchange to get what to me is a lot more stability.
Also glad to see that they're paying some attention to Mail. Mail's had problems in the last few editions of OS 10.
Putting it lightly.
No fans. They're no
They
fans
hired
of
some
this app.
smart people into that group.
Well, and that's I'm not blaming Apple, frankly, because the world of Mail is changing rapidly. And one of the big problems they had was that Gmail wasn't really a standard IMAP implementation.
And
so.
Gmail has been changing the way they do IMAP fairly quickly over the last couple of years.
So I don't
and not
blame
always
Apple
makes-
at all. And yet I would like to use Mail. So it's nice to see that they now it looks like a lot of this really is the iOSification of Mail, which maybe is not the best thing.
Well, it's. Sorry, go ahead, Ren.
No, I was going to probably say the same thing what you were going to say, Rene, which is that it's not so much the iOSification of Mail. It's taking smart features from iOS and implementing them in the full screen implementation of Mail.
Okay.
So Mail as is still just as much Mail on the desktop as it was before. It just now when you're in full screen, previously it was very, very difficult to try and write new emails while you were in full screen, which made full screen mode and Mail kind of useless. Now you can do sort of the swipe down the same way that you would on an iPad where you start to write and you're like, okay, I need to reference something. And you just pull that to the bottom of the screen and then you can go back to your messages. You can swap spaces entirely and go to a different thing. Or you can bring it back and you can start a new compose window because Mail is in Mail windows are in tabs now. So you can have several compose windows open at once without them floating around in random places on your screen. And I actually think those are both two really, really nice features for the Mac. They're very much pro features for people who want to multitask and want to access multiple things at once. The also swipe gestures. As a lifelong, or at least as long as the Magic Trackpad has existed, as a diehard Magic Trackpad user, I love the fact that there are more gestures on OS 10. The more multi-finger gestures that I can use, the better. And they're all, they're all disableable for people who really don't want them, or you just use a mouse and then you don't have to worry about them.
And there's new APIs for the Force Touch ones now, so developers can do all sorts of clever things, including all the different levels of sensitivity and all the levels of force feedback. So we should be seeing some cool apps.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that. I don't see anybody really taking advantage of the Force Touch. Maybe because it's not out in so many Macs yet.
Yeah, it's also just coming. The real APIs just came out for El Capitan.
Yeah, that might be a painful transition though, because there's still, I don't think there's any real agreement about what a Force Touch actually means. So if everybody can get on board and decide that every time I Force Touch on a mail item, for instance, that implies that I want to sort of dig deeper into the context of this message, for instance, if there's something basic, intrinsic to the idea of Force Touching that I can apply to every single thing, it should be as instinctive as holding down the Shift key or holding down the Command key or double clicking instead of single clicking.
No, you know what? Force Touch, I feel like we're in stage 0 at this point for a multi-stage expansion, where the benefits and the potential applications of haptic feedback is very, very expansive, where we're just seeing the very basics with press hard on your watch or press hard on your trackpad and you'll speed something up or you'll dig deep into a message. If we're talking about Force Touch that could potentially say have multiple pressure sensitivity levels where you can actually feel like the click sensation, which is already in the APIs. Think about pressing on a mail message and you lightly press to reply, press one level deeper than that to flag it, press 3 levels deeper than that to archive it immediately, press all the way down if you want to delete it.
Yikes.
Like it's very, and that's just straight pressing. What about, a couple of years from now, we get into multi-touch pressing where you might be able to get multiple inputs into Force Touch. I feel like we're just barely scratching the surface.
Yeah,
so I'm not surprised.
It's something we have to learn about. Like when I thinking more about like how you use it in Mail, given how Mail is good at automatically collecting messages into conversations, the thing that would feel instinctive to me is I'm not really sure that I need to open up this entire thread, but I would like to just sort of pop up into it. And by the harder I press into it, the deeper down into the thread that I'm looking into whatever pop-up description comes up. If it becomes a situation though where it really is hold it down a little bit to get a preview, hold it down a little bit harder to flag it, a little bit more to archive it. gosh, that for me, that's a lot of things to remember, and a lot of when I'm trying to get like 203 new emails out of my inbox, I can't be thinking hard about, okay, did I just feel 3 taps or 4 taps? Am I about to delete something, or about to basically automatically reply, "Hi, PR person, this is great. Please follow up with me on via phone by this." Oh my God, I just did something accidental.
Force touch text expander, Andy, you're brilliant.
Oh my God.
No.
It's gonna be cool. It's gonna be a little while before not only the developers but also the community decides what a force touch means. And once that gets settled in, it's the most exciting thing about the new MacBook by far.
And there were some excellent sessions at WWDC. So if you're interested in designing for this stuff, you can check out. Mike Stern did one for the watch, and I forget the name of the gentleman who did it for the trackpad, but they're both excellent.
I just find it so confusing that I sometimes turn it off. I sometimes turn it on because I can't really figure out. For instance, I'm taking your advice and I'm getting rid of Chrome and I'll use Safari on this little teeny weeny MacBook.
Yeah, definitely on that MacBook.
So, but now I want to put the Safari icon. It's in the dock right now, and I want to drag it up to the top, and I can't because of Force Touch. I can't really figure out what to do. It's not It's not obvious. You know what I'm saying?
You should just be able to press on it like I don't have my Force Touch with me. You should be able to just press on it
to do
and
anything right. It doesn't. It's not.
It's turbulence, Leo. Anything new creates turbulence.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting a little queasy, so I might just take my turn it off and hope that it can operate like it used to.
The difficulty is that you have to make sure that whatever their first experience is with this, it's a really good first experience.
It can be very confusing because it's not. We don't have any.
Well, it's not just confusing. It's like there are multiple gestures on my trackpad that I've disabled because my first day or two with it, I was accidentally triggering launchers. I was accidentally collecting windows, and I know that this could make my workflow a lot simpler, and it was well thought out. But right now, the instant in which I accidentally triggered it is a moment where I need to get stuff done. So that's when I go into preferences, turn that off, and then forget I've turned it off, and then I never use it again.
Yeah. And that's the problem. In fact, I think that's what happened to a lot of user interface tweaks like Expose and Mission Control. I think people discovered them and said, "What the hell?" Turned it off and never thought about it again.
As much as I like to spout off about how users should have choice, sometimes you do. If Apple feels as though a certain feature is really, really important, they really should introduce the ability to turn off that experience as a 0.1 upgrade, so that everybody's at least forced to absolutely hate it for 3 months, and only if they hate it after 3 months, as opposed to
what a good example is
different.
The natural scroll that Apple introduced. Because at first it was incredibly confusing. They didn't force it on us, did they, Andy? But they kind of, you couldn't, for instance, turn on a new Mac without being taught how to use it.
They looked at you with judging eyes, Leo.
Yeah, they were very judgmental. And you know what? I'm glad they are, because now I'm so used to it. When I use another desktop, I turn it on. In fact, I just installed the latest version of Ubuntu on one of my laptops, and I was like, what's with this scroll? And then I went into the settings, and there's a checkbox that says natural scroll.
Scroll like an animal, disable.
Yeah, it's really, and so that's a really good example of something that people really were upset about at first, and your muscle memory really rebelled, but once you got used to it, it was the natural way to do it, the right way to do it.
Well, not necessarily natural, but different. It does teach you that sometimes you're rebelling against something that is simply different.
Right. Exactly.
It's sometimes you just don't have time in the day to break from whatever your established routine is. I still don't like the vanishing scroll bars, especially on web browsers, where I wish there was a way that you could actually just disable that feature only for web browsers, because the number of times where, okay, thank you very much, Mac, because there's a button I need to click, but every time I go to click it, now you put a scroll bar on top of that, and now I can't click that. No, because dang it.
Yeah. All right, that's, I think, El Capitan in a nutshell, and a great article, by the way. Highly recommend it at imore.com, where you can see a lot more of the new details. Let's talk about iOS 9.
iOS 9.
iOS 9. Can you talk about that yet, or are you still under embargo?
No, so it's interesting. Yeah, the NDA is so different. Like it's similar to last year. No pictures, no videos. Of course, people post pictures and videos, but you can talk about the general. Like you can give an opinion on it. You can't review it, but you can give an opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Give your opinion.
No. Terrific. It's terrific. It's the next 5 years of iPad. It's like
Really?
I'm serious. They just bought the iPad another 5 years.
Wow.
It's that there are times when I'm watching the keynote as someone who's supposed to be writing about this and a journalist, but then there's the time where I'm as a consumer, as someone who owns an iPad, who wants it to work better, who has maybe been at least 10% tempted that, gee, if I've got another, my third generation iPad is pretty long in the tooth, I need to buy a new iPad, and trying to make that choice. Do I give up on now that I have a 13-inch, somewhat lightweight notebook, do I give up on the idea of needing a large screen iPad, or do I even look at these, again, $400, $500, $600, very well-made Windows 8, soon to be Windows 10 based tablets? What do I need to do with this? And then when you look at every single complaint that I was making about myself about using an iPad, that it's too difficult to have two things going on at once. The hardware keyboard support is just needlessly behind the times, just without even the ability of just hitting Command Tab to simply switch between apps. All these little features that just seem like such simple things, but would allow me to use this little tablet as my go-to computer, whether I'm out of the office for 3 hours or 3 days. That's the stuff that Apple brought in. And there's been a lot spoken about how sales of larger tablets across the industry are not doing well. But now that people are getting access to larger phones, they decide that I don't even need a tablet anymore. Apple has really made the statement now, or excuse me, in an unannounced product, it really seems that they're saying that when all of this is released, we are going to actually really make another step forward in that post-PC revolution that we've been talking about for 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Rene.
I was going to say the cool thing is, like, a lot of the features, there's a little bit to unpack here. So you get picture-in-picture for video, which is great. So if you just want to watch a video, you can watch that video while you use every other feature of your iPad, which is tremendous. But there's also slide over, which lets you bring in a sidebar containing an app. And if developers used all the size class stuff that Apple introduced last year, they get a lot of that for free. I think Apple said it took Twitter or somebody, just a very short amount of time to get everything working. Half an hour. Yeah, it was amazing. Only the iPad 2 gets the side-by-side, the split view apps, the way Yosemite gets
the
them.
Air 2. The Air 2.
Sorry. The iPad Air 2, I apologize, gets that because the iPad Air 2 has a lot more resources. We talked about that before. And if you look at it, I went to a session on this. It was really interesting. If you look at it, they want 60 frames per second of animation, which means that you have about 16 milliseconds to get all that stuff done. And getting 2 apps to respond that way, they had a whole bunch of advice for developers on how to take an app that used to be able to consume the entirety of system resources and now has to share potentially with another app, potentially with a picture-in-picture video playing at the same time, and how they could reduce all that down and be a good citizen. Because if your app goes past the limits in split screen, you dump everything back to the home screen. It's not like one app goes away and the other app goes home screen. You dump the user back right to the home screen, and you want to minimize that happening as much as possible. So a side effect of all this is you get that app thinning, I think called it app thinning technology, and the efficiency technology, where they're also going to make apps much better citizens, so to speak, on the iPad. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the iPad features are incredible and fast. Again, just talking about early betas here, but absolutely incredible how speedy it runs on the Air 2, both slide over and full split screen, or split. Is it split view? Is that the official name, Rene?
It's split view on the Mac. I'm not sure what it's officially.
I'm gonna assume it's split view on the iPad as well. But just again, you're asking your computer to do a lot of resources here, to manage a lot of animation, a lot of crazy stuff. Picture-in-picture is something that I have been wanting since probably the first iPad. Because as much as I love watching things on a big screen, knowing me and just how I work, what I usually end up doing is like putting a tiny video in the corner of my Mac while I'm like browsing Twitter or something like this. It might encourage, actually, unfortunately, the not single screen minded view, right? Where we're constantly doing multiple things while watching TV or while listening to keynote sessions or things like that. But it's really like they're smart features. The keyboard improvements, not only the fact that you can build custom shortcuts for external keyboards, but also the internal keyboards on a per app basis. You can have custom buttons, and including the copy paste. Mail has a great one where it's like it's an attachments browser. right on the keyboard. So instead of having to press and hold on the cursor, and then like scroll through to get to like insert photo video, there's just a button, and you can attach from iCloud Drive, and iCloud Drive gets its own app if you want it to. There are so many like little tiny features. The fact that you can now use a cursor by putting 2 fingers on the keyboard. And again, something that I would have never thought of in terms of implementation.
That feature. Yeah.
Oh, and it's so good. It's so smart and so and just such a great implementation. And then we talk a lot about the iPad, but the iPhone got a fair amount of really, really awesome stuff too. It gets that cursor thing, which I didn't realize at first. The iPhone 6 and 6 Plus get the 2-finger cursor insertion. The new multitasking bar is cool. The low power mode is actually the thing that I'm most excited about, where they didn't talk a whole lot about it at the keynote, but low power mode, their goal is to save the iPhone an hour plus in battery life by enabling it. And that's enabling it at 20% when it gives you that like low power mode warning. You enable it earlier. Too. Yeah. Oh, it really is.
It's so impressive because already iOS devices just absolutely kick the butt of every other comer in terms of battery life. But that was not enough. They found some nickels and dimes that they could that they could still pinch some pennies and give you extra battery life. That's like it's such a prestige. That's what makes this into a prestige product.
Well, it's like if you put the phone face down, it knows you're not looking at it, so why bother lighting up the lock screen for notifications? Some of it, again, is a little controversial, like they're doing deep links and backlinks, which I love. So if you're in an app and you get a message and you go to messages, there's a back to that app. Or if you click, if you go from Facebook to Safari, there's a back to Facebook button. The problem is with deep links, you have to own the website. So the deep link for Twitter is always going to Twitter. You can't set it to Tweetbot or Twitterific or something else because neither of those apps can prove they own the website. And that's really important to the security model they've set up. So people who make Tweetbot and Twitterific are not going to be happy that by default now links before we go to Safari, which is kind of a no man's land, but now they'll specifically go to someone else's app. But as a user, the ability to move around, it was always hard. You could carousel into an app, but you had to find your way back. And now finding your way back is a tap. And it just makes everything move perceptibly so much faster.
Yeah, I was so worried over the past half a year, especially after seeing how well Apple built the new 12-inch MacBook, that when I first used the iPad, I felt as though this really is the next revolution. This is finally, after 25 years of we have a keyboard, we have a screen, a redefinition of computing that really makes sense for modern times. And I was really anticipating that by now, I wouldn't think that notebooks and desktops would be obsolete, but I really thought that they would have sort of parity with tablets in terms of people who are actually getting stuff done, as opposed to just firing out a few emails. And looking at how well the 12-inch MacBook works, that you have a device that has roughly the same battery life as an iPad, it's roughly the same size as an iPad. On the Windows side, you have tablets that are roughly the same size as an iPad, roughly the same price as an iPad, but also run desktop apps. It got me thinking: have we lost that battle? Have people been given that option of a larger tablet and said, both developers and users, no, that's nice, but we don't want them. And this is finally that next step forward that says, no, we can really make this into the next generation device, so that you don't have to bring a notebook and a tablet. You don't even necessarily want a big phone now, because you're going to have this one content device that can do so many tasks. And at worst, you'll take a mobile keyboard with you, but other than that, you'll have the perfect device for everything.
Did we see drag and drop? It was one thing I was looking for, but I was busy live blogging. I didn't pay attention, and I forgot to go back and look, because if it's not now, hopefully it'll be soon, where you could just drag stuff between those two windows, and that'd be lovely.
Yeah, sadly, there's no drag and drop right now.
Yeah. I think that's
next year.
I think that's the cut, copy, and paste of 1.0. It'll be there when they got it perfect.
Well, they need the processor for it too. Because, I mean, you think about dragging. Right now, the share button is the closest thing. And you can see that the Notes app is kind of experimenting with this, with just share anything. You can pop up a share button when you highlight text now, which is pretty cool. And also, I can't wait to see what that does for workflow as a side note. But yeah, the potential is huge. It's just about getting the hardware for it.
The ADA winning workflow, and they looked super excited at the show as well.
The what? ADA winning?
Apple Design Award winning.
Apple Design Award, yeah.
Not Americans with Disability Act.
No, fantastic. No. There was a lot of good apps in the ADAs this year.
Nice.
There really was. But yeah, the workflow guys are excellent. And anybody who hasn't tried out that app, even if you're like, oh, why do I need automation on iOS? They offer a really easy way to get used to it and get started with automation. And once you get started, you're hooked. You're absolutely hooked. Where you're like, oh, it's so easy. I built like a Rot 13 generator of all things, and I don't.
What are you passing notes in class? What do you need a
Pretty
Rot?
much.
And we saw Sal
Encoding
said hi,
spoilers
he
on
liked
Twitter.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sal said hi, and he also was super happy for the workflow guys too, because you always wonder, would he have preferred to bring automation to the iPhone? But he was super happy for them as well, which was nice to see.
Workflow's $2.99, and I'm gonna have to. It's been around for a while. I mean, we've showed it before, right? I mean, but is it more capable in 9? Is that the point?
Well, it
They
can
look super
potentially
happy.
be. Yeah, with the new access to text in the share sheet, I think that's going to be a big thing for them.
So you could
because
spit out
workflow-
text or read text, which
Yeah, workflow works by using the share sheet because it lives
Right.
as a share sheet extension. You can also use it on the home screen, but in general, you use it as a share sheet, and it can only scrape certain things, including it'll do like get contents of entire page. But being able to highlight specific things and
then
just
send it?
like send.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there and a lot of excitement that I know they're probably busy dreaming up magical new scenarios. And the fact that it works on the Apple Watch, it allows the Apple Watch to do some things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do on the watch, which I think is pretty cool.
I think that's really interesting. Yeah.
Like Andy said, it's a remarkable enhancement of the ability to get work done on an iPad.
And yet, when I saw this, I thought, oh, Apple's gonna hate this. Guess not.
Nope.
It just feels like this is exactly what the iPad's not supposed to do. But this is the new and I think there's a reason they won an Apple Design Award. It's Apple signaling.
It's beautiful.
Well, but also it's signaling it's okay. You can use an iPad for serious work. It's okay.
Well, not only that, but I think it's a great vote towards customization and giving the user more control.
Which is something Apple seems like they didn't want you to do before, right?
Apple has always sent very, very mixed messages on that, at best mixed messages. And that doesn't just affect Apple products. It also affects developers who might have a really great idea, but they don't want to risk it. If they decide that, wouldn't it be great to have a calculator as in the notification system? Maybe Apple will approve it.
Yeah,
maybe
right.
They won't.
And
Let's
maybe
put
they'll do
6 months-
both.
Let's put 6 months worth of work in it and just roll the dice.
Yeah.
And so to see Apple approve an app that's as muscular as this, that really it's a very it really does feel like a very non-iOS type of app. And by that I mean that you're not used to living in a post iOS 8 world in which you have a lot more control as a user over this device. You're not just limited to the stuff that Apple will let you and developers do. Apple is at least you're still in the corral, but they've made it's more like a jungle theme park where the animals roam free and you're in cars. the wardens are in little cars that are in the victims of the other people.
Is this how much of this is influenced by? It doesn't feel like Microsoft Surface has been so successful that Apple should worry, and yet these are. I mean, let's face it, the slide and all that is straight from Windows 8. How much of this is Windows?
There's been a long debate inside Apple about whether or not these are all intelligent debates. When we argue about Google or Apple or Microsoft, it's almost always the same debates they have inside the company because they're all super smart people too.
Right.
And in Apple, there was a debate about whether or not an iPad should always be that thing where someone who's felt alienated by traditional computing can feel safe, can have a home button and an icon, and can always get back there.
Right.
But they've shown over time that they're able to add levels of complexity, like you have Control Center and Notification Center, and all these things that someone who doesn't know about them never has to worry about them. They're never an impediment to them getting to the simple functionality of the iPad. And with them, it's not always like, should we have side-by-side apps or should we have this? It's how should we implement it in a way that provides that functionality to advanced users without ever getting in the way of someone who's picking up a computing device for their first time. And this is that kind of system. If you never know about multi-window apps, you'll never know about them. You'll just run your apps the same way you always did. If and when you accidentally discover it or you read about it or hear about it, you can try it out. And if you like it, you can use it. And if you don't, again, it'll never get in the way of your computing. So some people at Apple believe, and we know Tim Cook uses his iPad, I don't know if most of the time, but a lot of the time.
Oh, interesting.
There's a lot of really hardcore iPad users, and just like the Apple Watch is built on the same foundations as the iPhone and iPad, they all have backboard and front board, and then the iPhones and iPads run Springboard, and the Watch runs Carousel, and Apple TV is similar. You can maybe do something with that top layer that lets the iPad be more of a tablet, that takes advantage of its silicon and its screen and lets it be more than just a large iPhone. But how do you do that without taking away what you've already provided? And that's why maybe they move slowly sometimes, or maybe they do things one step at a time. But I think it ultimately gets to a place where the device itself can better fit the needs of more people. And you never feel like, this is half desktop, half mobile. I'm confused. I don't know how to do it. I have one version of the software here. And they don't want any of that to ever happen. And it does take time. But I think so far their track record is at least pretty good.
Well, I think it's that's absolutely true, and that tracks with stuff that I've been hearing as well. But I think a lot of it is also due to the fact that you don't really know what you've built until you get millions of people using it, and then those people tell you what you've built. One of the takeaways from the first iPad intro was that they were very, very vague about what this was. I think they realized that this was a device with a lot of potential, but they really can't. They don't want to tell people it's a book reader. They don't want to tell people it's something that can replace your notebook, because people are going to tell you how to use it. And so over the years, people have been using an iPad as a primary device. There are a lot of people that just don't have a need for the full muscle power of a notebook, and they really do want something simpler. It's a very, very popular gift to give if you've got a mom or a dad who's 60 or 70 years old and they're just not intrigued by computers like you are. They just want to be able to keep up with Facebook and get pictures from the family. A lot of people they're either going out and buying iPads because they find that it works just as well for them. And I think they've collected a lot of that information. They've also looked at what Samsung has done in a very, very similar split screen mode. They've seen how the UI of Windows 8 works, which is also very, very similar. And it's there. I don't think Apple is beyond saying, you know what, this does actually work very, very well. We can do it better, but this is not a bad idea, and there's no reason for us not to implement it this way. But you do have a really big point in that sometimes, when we're being pundits and we're saying, I wish Apple would add this. I wish Apple, for instance, would fix Springboard, because, oh my God, it's still the exact same application launcher that they had on the Newton message pad in the late 1990s, for God's sake. And what we're clamoring for is for Apple to replace Springboard with something better, when what Apple actually would tend to do is to put in new features into iOS that make Springboard less important or even obsolete. And that's what they've been doing with Spotlight on iOS 9, where you can still complain about how the Springboard is clumsy, it's hard to organize your own apps, but in a year's time or 2 years' time, you will never really even touch it. You will just simply swipe to the left, where where the operating system has anticipated that here are the 6 apps you almost certainly were meaning to launch at this moment. And here's the data that you were going to launch an app in order to get. We dug that out of your calendar. We dug that out of your other messaging app, and makes it so that you don't have to launch apps quite so often. So
or maybe that's
so
in the
much
center and Springboard's to the right.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you always have to make these punditry comments with at least 5 pounds of humility, because if Apple just gave us what we asked for and responded directly to what we were complaining about, instead of thinking about the reasons why we're complaining about certain things, iOS wouldn't be nearly as good, or macOS even wouldn't be nearly as good as it is right now.
Let's take a little break. Come back. Lots more to talk about. Also picks, Serenity Caldwell. Serenity. Can I just call you R2 Detonator? Please.
You want.
R2 Detonator is here. Serenity Caldwell from MyMore.com. Rene Ritchie, who has no fancy roller derby name.
I've yet to earn one, Leo.
But what would it be if you had one?
Oh, I don't know. I think those things have to come. I think always those things have to come out of the moment. If you try to set.
Oh, they're given to you, not chosen.
I don't know, but I think if it comes out of the moment, then it feels better. If you try to make one up, it's always going to be quasi-lame.
Serenity, would you get to work on that?
I will think.
Yeah.
I will think hard.
He needs a name. He's also at imore.com. And Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times. I'm Leo Laporte. Our show today brought to you by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app, if you're a mobile app developer, you probably are thinking about payments, how you incorporate them. You might want to check out what everybody else is doing. People like GitHub. You trust GitHub, right? They've been using Braintree payments since day one. Uber, Oh, Uber's got that great thing, right? You get in the car, they drive you somewhere, you get out, and the payment's handled automatically. That's Braintree's one touch. Lyft, too, and Airbnb, and StubHub, and hotels tonight. Braintree payments are used by everybody. Why? Because it's the best. It's easy to integrate, just 10 lines of code, and you've got a secure, feature-rich solution your users will love. Scales with you, too, from your first dollar to your billionth dollar. And you get Apple Pay, you get PayPal, you get Venmo, you get Bitcoin if you want. You get all the payment solutions. Of course, credit cards, too. Could not be easier. No wonder so many companies use this. Braintree's made the payment experience in these apps seamless and magical with their V.0 SDK. You can have the same experience if you want in your own app. And they scale with you. And mostly, you want customers to feel trust in what's going on, and Braintree gives you that. No longer will your users leave at the shopping cart because it's ungainly, difficult to use, or scary. No, people are going to say, wow, this is nice. It's easy to use. A full-stack payment solution. BraintreePayments.com/MacBreak. Superior fraud protection, customer service, fast payouts. And in case you needed a little sweetener, your first $50,000 in transactions. Fee-free. Yes, fee-free. BraintreePayments.com/MacBreak. We thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly. Let's see. Apple will, I don't know, you got to interpret this headline from Recode. Apple will share 71.5% of Apple Music revenue with music rights owners in the U.S. Is that good? Is that bad? What does that mean? Is it a concession? Why is this a news story?
It's a news story because people want to know how much artists are being paid.
Oh, okay.
And whether or not it's a good deal or a bad deal. Streaming music services have in the past been derided for how little they pay artists, sometimes fractions of pennies. I mean, this kind of a news story is still pretty early on in the game. We still, Apple's like, we've got a big catalog. We're not really talking about what we have in the catalog, but we've got a big catalog and we're going to pay artists and it's going to be great.
They are making these. They're making these negotiations right now. So the number, the number is known.
Yeah,
for most labels.
I think that in general, this is a good. It's a good thing. Apple has in the past always been pretty good to their artists in contrast to other services. But streaming is an entirely new venture for them. We do have iTunes Radio is probably the closest comparison that we can have to what they've been paying their artists. I'm not sure because I'm not super well versed on percentages and stuff when it comes to streaming service revenue, how this shakes out.
It seems close to what they pay for. They pay 70%, right, if you buy it on iTunes and keep 30. So this is right in there. And I don't know how it's comparable or not. My guess is the fact that they said this means it's a good number. It's a number that not only the record labels will like, but artists will like. By the way, that 71.5% is the average. The numbers will fluctuate outside the U.S. Actually, Apple will pay 71.5% in the U.S. It will average around 73% worldwide. Executives at the labels Apple's working with said that's the number. Now, that includes payments to the people who own the sound recordings as well as publishing rights. And that's something that is a little different. Radio pays royalties to publishing rights alone, and they don't pay performance rights. So this is better than broadcast radio. At least it's my understanding. I'm sure the chat room will correct me if I'm wrong on that. And, of course, it doesn't mean that's money that's going to go to the artist. It means that's money that goes to the labels. And as we know, somehow it gets stuck there a lot of times, just doesn't flow through. Apple won't pay music owners anything for songs that are streamed during the 3-month trial. Sorry, kids. Apparently that was something the music labels didn't like. But according to Apple, these payments are, it's Robert Konderk, who's the guy who's negotiating these deals. These payments are a few percentage points higher than the industry standard, in part to account for the 3-month trial period. So that's 3 times longer than most other services. The exception to the industry standard is Spotify. Apple, of course, doesn't like the fact that Spotify offers free music. and neither do the record companies. That was the bone of contention with Taylor Swift and why she pulled 1989 off of Spotify. They insisted on if she was going to be on Spotify, she had to be available in the free tier as well. Apple will offer a free tier via iTunes and Beats One, but I don't know. That's more like radio, right? Apple says they'll pay music owners a much lower fee for music streamed on radio and Beats One.
Traditional radio.
Yeah. Well, no, iTunes Radio. So, and by the way, that's good news that iTunes Radio is going to continue. I was a little worried. They kind of have deprecated it. It disappeared from the menu in iTunes 11.
That's a little surprising. I hope that Apple does some sort of clarification event. If in a few months when they got 10 minutes on a stage, I wish that they could put their entire music strategy forward in one simple 10-minute professional presentation that gives me a better overview of what they're providing and what each corner of this service provides.
Yeah. Apple will stream at 256 kilobits. That is kind of typical. Spotify gives you 3 choices. There's an extreme streaming that will do 320 kilobits. Apple will not do that high level. Beats used to do 320 at its top level. Why am I getting a... Holy moly. Never mind. Don't pay no attention to my website. I know why. The Next Web wanted to give me notifications, and then they gave me a page of options. I'm not crazy about the web notification thing, I got to say.
I have never, ever, ever enabled any web access to notifications or location.
You'd have to be pretty special for me to do that. Spotify, Google Play Music, and Rdio all stream at their highest 320 kilobit. Now, most of them do MP3s. Apple, I presume, will be doing AACs, right? Or do we know?
I believe AACs, yeah. Okay. And that's one of the things. I forget who was talking about this, which is a shame because they know their stuff about music. I think it was Kirk McElern, actually, was pointing out that AAC is a slightly stronger codec than your traditional MP3, so it doesn't matter that they're streaming at a slightly lower bit rate because it sounds better.
It's from the same people who did MP3. It's their successor to MP3 and gives you better quality at lower bit rates. Apple has confirmed 256 kilobit. They have not confirmed AAC, but I think there are those who say 256 kilobit AAC would be about the same as 320 kilobit MP3, and most people would say, I don't know.
Yeah, we should.
I can't tell.
Listen to it, maybe.
I don't know.
Shrug.
You know what? I think you made the point. For most people,
for most people, better masterings of the music will make a bigger difference than the bit rate of the stream.
Buy a better speaker than that Beats pill.
And Apple's, I believe they're paying a lot of attention now to mastering their music, which for a lot of people, again, will be much better than just having a high quality stream of a low quality master.
When I remember when iTunes first came out, we heard a lot of stories about iTunes employees taking CDs, sticking them in their machines and ripping them so that they could populate the music library. I doubt they do that still, but that's the mastering you're talking about, not the making of the CD and the original CD, but of making of the MP3 or the AAC file. I'm sorry, Andy, go ahead.
No, I was just going to point out that Apple does have a mastered for iTunes program that starts right in the studio, so that it's not just take whatever tape you have. It's here's what we do with music, and here's how you can basically make sure that whatever content you're making sounds great when it's downloaded from iTunes.
So that that's interesting. So in fact, they're putting the burden on the label and the recording engineers to make the AACs.
They're just simply saying, if we give you extra details about what we're doing on our end, that you do with this information what you will, and because there's people behind those boards who absolutely know what they're doing, and they say that, so your headphone cord is 6 feet and not 3 feet. Give me a second. I'm going to give you a brand new version of this album because I don't like the impedance value. I really did mix this for a 6-foot cord.
Let me do a quick rumor mill here. I like this rumor. The iPhone 6S, that's a rumor. We don't even know what the next phone will be called, will feature a USB Type-C connector. You think that's credible?
Sure.
Love that
I think
if
that's
that's
potentially credible. I mean, you're talking about something that Apple's already using on one of its computers. You're talking about getting, I mean, as cool as the Lightning standard is, you're talking about switching to a universal standard that could support a whole host of other things. And it theoretically makes it easier to work with the MacBook. So, I mean, it's possible. I don't know if it will come until the iPhone 7, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it in the 6S.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I'll just get rid of the port, make everyone crazy.
Yeah. You don't need to sync via wires.
Who needs wires?
When the battery runs out, just buy a new one. You're welcome.
Just put your Apple Watch charger on the back.
The only question mark. The only question mark in USB 3 for the iPhone or the iPad, for that matter, is do they have the hardware scaled down so that it will fit into whatever 3 microns of space they have available for that controller?
Just remember how small the MacBook is, Andy.
It looks like it's about the same size, right? I mean, we don't know. I don't know. That's pretty close. And there's a Type-C connector. And
no, I mean just the controllers and everything else.
Yeah, the chipset and all that.
And I think Lightning has a chip on the outside, if I remember correctly.
I would love to see just everybody. Android. Google's already said yes. Type-C is coming to Android. There is issue, of course, with the EU, which requires a micro USB connector. Although Apple solves that by just providing an adapter in the box, I understand. But Type-C, because it's an open standard, it's not Lightning. I'm thrilled that they made it available on the MacBook. I expect to see it. I hope to see it everywhere. But remember, hardware changes on the S series are unusual, right?
Yes.
Although we're already talking about Force Touch on the digitizing screen.
Well, casing changes. I mean, like they've made better cameras. They've they've done a lot. But the Lightning connector came in on the 5. It didn't come in on the 4S.
Right. How about Qi?
I would say the case, if we look at the 6's case for a second, that's about the size of the C connector.
Yeah,
it's just a different, you might actually not have to change the outer machining and just the chipset inside. I don't know this for a fact because I don't have a USB-C. Someone else with a USB-C port should check and see if
get one during that
port is that size. But
yeah, again, it's not the outside stuff. I think it's the inside stuff. That I've heard a couple of conflicting reports about the sizes of the Lightning chips inside an iPhone versus support for USB-C inside an iPhone.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
So that's the only reason. That's the only reason. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we skip the whole next generation plug entirely, and then we just go to inductive charging. Maybe
wireless charging is great, and. If you've seen the Samsung Galaxy S6 ads, what's one of the things they ding the iPhone 6 on is the lack of wireless charging. That would eliminate the need for a port, but I think people like the idea of a high-speed port for
if you take off the port, you also make it harder to service the thing. You also make it harder to administrate the thing. I don't think that port's going anywhere.
But as Serenity points out, you have a port on the watch, but you just don't. It's not for you.
Yeah, but it's also.
I mean, I would prefer to keep the port as is, or change it to USB-C. But additionally, wireless charging would not be a complaint.
Wireless charge. It's one of those great little transformative features that you add to a phone. Like the first time that I got a wireless charging pad for my Android phone and realized that, my God, I've not needed to quote charge unquote my phone for the past 9 days because I've got a charging pad on my desk, I've got a charging pad on my nightstand, I've got a charging pad on the end table in my living room where I tend to sit, and just the act of dropping my phone where I was going to put it anyway causes it to top off the batteries. Of course, it'd be nicer to have a battery that lasts more than 5 or 6 hours, but one step at a time.
It keeps our tea hot. It's great.
Yeah.
I guess they don't include a micro USB port in the Apple box. How do they get around EU regulations then?
They have an adapter available.
You could as long as it's available, you can do it.
I don't know if it's in the box or not, but they definitely have one. I've seen them.
Okay. And apparently, again, I'm trusting our European chatters on this one. As long as it's a standard, like micro USB Type-C, it would be acceptable as well, they say. So you wouldn't need to do anything extra for that. Nice.
Yeah. And what a fantasy to leave the house with just one type of cable. I was in New York. I was in New York last week, and the only cable I did not bring with me was a lightning cable, and so I had to go to a Dwayne Reed and spend $14 for a hot electric pink lightning cable just to make sure that I could still use my iPad before I got home.
Smashing.
It's adorable. I love it, but
we were being asked our thoughts about Apple's content blocking plugins, which were
okay. So that's an interesting debate. We talked about it on Wednesday on This Week in Google. Apple has said that mobile Safari will allow for the first time ever ad blockers.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean that Apple will include ad blockers, right? But they will allow it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They've just added new functionality so that among the things you can do is you can actually have code that interposes between the browser and the outside world, so that it can control what goes into the browser. And so, obviously, the first application of that is naturally an ad blocking app. I think it's a good idea, because the thing that really raised my eyebrow a few weeks ago when Tim Cook made his little speech about privacy and about how Google, unnamed outside companies that are within a short drive of us, are immoral and they're terrible and they take your information, is that he didn't address the fact that most of the leakiness of personal information comes through web browsers and not through the operating system, as far as I'm concerned. At least the most damaging stuff comes through web browsers. Those are ad trackers that will profile you, and unlike Google and unlike Facebook, they will sell your name and your address and all your personal information and the profile that they've done. So I thought that it's a little bit it's not as valuable for him to make that screed about how Google does its business without saying that, yes, but you're not doing anything to help people on iPhones and on iPads, the largest, most popular browsers in America, to protect their personal information that way. So on that basis, I should be very, very much in favor of this, and I am. The only problem is that when you start to think about it in terms of a larger ecosystem, where you say that they're not allowing ad blockers inside their new news app, are they? And they do sell ads through the news app, and they will allow their partners to sell ads through their own news app. And every time that someone uses a Safari tab without an ad blocker, that helps Google in some way, because there's probably Google ad metrics going on there. So on the one hand, this is a really big win for consumers, because you really do need to take control of the flow of your personal information. On the other hand, you want to see if there's like a white conference room with brightly lit with plants and greenery and like colorful paintings where they talk about benefits to the users, and then like and then Tim goes to watch it now, and the next item on the agenda, hey Shlomo, change the lighting to evil mode and put all these dark, these red lights, and now here's how we're going to stick it to Google, and how we're going to stick it to every publisher that doesn't want to play ball with the news app.
In fairness, I mean, like those content blockers won't work in Chrome unless Google enables them. They won't work in Flipboard or Google News. They won't work in any app, including Apple's News, outside of Safari. They're very much a Safari plugin. And like Springboard did a great job this year. UIKit did a great job this year. WebKit, they did the content blockers. They did a new Safari web view, so that if you get a web view inside an app, you can now bring your passwords and forms and bookmarks and stuff with you, so you don't have to keep authenticating again just because you're inside an app. And they have a whole new inspector. And the content blockers, we have ads on our website. I'm not sure how to feel about this yet, because there are really bad ads, but my guess is that people will block all ads. It won't depend on how good or bad the ad is. But they showed some demos at WWDC where they were blocking all sorts of different content, including some of the stuff that makes social networks almost impossible to use when you're on mobile browsers. And it seems to me like a tool, and I just don't know enough about how people are going to use it yet to be too judgy on it.
Yeah, that's the big deal. We don't know that people will actually want to use it. If it becomes the number one paid app on the App Store and gets that kind of notice, even still, there are people who just don't want to customize whatever they've got in there. It's just interesting things to discuss a week or two after WWDC. And just like it was interesting to discuss, is Apple going to make sure that you can't make a living selling apps outside the App Store? Interesting to talk about, but then let's wait and see how they actually implement it and how it actually affects things. Because I think it's scary, especially given that most of the people, three of the four people in this conversation make their living through ads that are on websites. And if any company is able to simply turn off that source of revenue, it might be like the days of newspapers 15 or 20 years ago when suddenly they can't sell classified ads and they can't sell car ads and they can't sell real estate ads. You have to figure out, well, that's where we're making our money from. Now, how do we redefine ourselves? It's great news for Jason. It's great news for Jason Snell. Great news for Gruber. Great news for anybody else who has their own personal has a blog that is sponsor supported as opposed to running actual ads, though.
Yeah, that was the thing. Was some people were sending us tweets saying, it's going to kill all the ads. But for me, like if it becomes successful, it just creates a bigger market for native ads or for sponsorships. Or
which is exactly what you don't want, if you ask me.
Ben Thompson has a really interesting take
what I
on it
want.
Ben Thompson has a really interesting take on the native ad stuff where he says it depends. Like we've given native ads a bad name, but all the TV shows and stuff we've watched, in essence, provided advertising in the same format as the content. And even sponsorships reads in podcasts, or it's the host of the podcast reading it. And if done right, you could have an experience that's really, really good and that's carefully curated, like what Gruber or Jason Snell provides. When done wrong, you get things like really weird things in the Atlantic that nobody wants to read.
Right. That's the
problem. It's about thinking about it's about thinking about the end user, right? It's about thinking about your readers and respecting your readers' time and making sure that your readers, understand what they're reading, that you're not trying to trick them.
That's the point.
B, exactly. As long as you're not trying to trick them and you make it very clear, like, we are doing this in part to bring you good content, but also because we legitimately like these guys. Like, we're not going to accept sponsors from creepy software company that's going to steal your data. Here's, sponsors that we believe in or sponsors that we feel like we can talk about. Like the one reason like the Twit ads and the MacBreak Weekly ads are so great, Leo, is that you can actually talk about, you can talk about NatureBox and you can talk about Casper and you can talk about all of these things. And you put a personal touch to it. And it's not just like, buy this DVD software. Here's a creepy how-to. Yeah, exactly. It has to be personal. It has to be like the old-timey radio ads.
Well, that's what it is, isn't it? It's the old-timey radio ads.
It feels like a bigger problem for the middle class, so to speak, where an outlet like the New York Times, which is its own juggernaut, they're not going to be affected. Outlets like lean operations that have only 2 or 3 people are not going to be affected that much because on top of what Ren said, it really is part of the relationship that the creator has with the audience. Because when I see an ad on Jason's site or when I see an ad on Gruber's site, I don't see this big ad machine that's trying to sell Coke. I see that here is a way that I can. I'm grateful that this company is helping to create this product, create this website that I visit on a regular basis, and that the person who is adding this ad in is also grateful for that content. It's the people in the middle that might have a problem. But even then, as Rene said, there are ways around that. You could simply change your site so that you get a different experience with an ad blocker, either by shaming people or by simply saying, we have a 400-word version of our 1,600-word feature article that is available to anybody without an ad blocker. If you'd like to turn that off, then we can show you all this great content. So it's changed, and people are going to have to just change this to go see it.
Yeah, I'd be curious how that works.
It didn't work out well for newspapers, but it also created, again, the ability for Jason, after leaving a huge publisher, to make what I believe to be an acceptable living for a family person on content that he creates with a small group of friends.
Yeah,
and that's not a bad thing either.
Nope. Anything else in the rundown you fellows and gals wish to discuss before we take a break and come to our picks of the week?
One thing left on the table is WatchOS 2, which kind of felt like half rounding out the features that didn't get finished in WatchOS 1 and also getting compatibility with all the new stuff in iOS 9. So I was quite happy with it.
Yippers.
Yeah. It really does feel, even more in retrospect, that April was a soft launch for the watch.
Yes.
And that it's not really going to be released until September or October.
Yeah.
When Watch 2.0 comes out and has all these features that are just that feels so important for Apple Watch to make it that much more useful, and not just more useful, but more usable. And the ability to simply go into the car, drive to the mall, walk into an Apple store, and walk out with an Apple Watch after a demo, which is only going to start in another couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, isn't it? Where you can finally start buying them through the Apple Store. So,
yep, maybe sooner. So much stuff, Leo. Big dub.
Big dub.
Yeah.
Fun dub.
And I think the videos, people can actually access the videos again this year without being like there's a whole bunch of other stuff we didn't touch on, like developer accounts that having to pay $100. You can still run code on your own apps. There's new distribution. Test Flight got a lot better. And all of the sessions, I believe, you don't need to log in to watch them. So if you're at all interested in how and these videos were beautifully made this year. It wasn't just the slides being shown. Even the smaller presentations, they were cutting and showing angles. So if you're interested at all in this, go to developer.apple.com and start watching.
That's good to know.
Really great stuff.
Yeah, I love it that they didn't, in the past they've been so tight with that information. And it makes sense to encourage developers, right?
The live streaming was phenomenal. There were groups of developers who just couldn't make it in or couldn't have a place to go, and they sat together and they watched it, and it was rock solid. It was a tremendously well done job.
Yeah. That was one of the best streams I've ever seen. And of course, this is the season in which I'm doing nothing but staying in my office, looking at 3 screens and trying to keep up with 2 streams at the same time. And
I'm not going to say anything, but I think I know who did that stream. Enough
Awesome
said.
people.
People who know what they're
be the
doing.
work of the Scarlet Pimpernel. if I'm not mistaken.
I think that Apple brought in the pros from Dover, is what I'm saying. And the pros from Dover make no mistakes. And they
Amazing
certainly
job.
don't show Chinese translation in truck slides.
But if you think about it, this wasn't just one event. This was, I think they broadcast every section in Presidio, which is 3 or 4 talks a day. I think they said 50 or 60 sessions. Maybe it was just
That's
30,
great.
but still a tremendous amount of streaming over the span of a week. It wasn't like one and done, phew, we're out of here, go get a beer. It was every day, all day streaming. And that's so error prone.
Yeah.
And to do it like that is just phenomenal.
This announcement from our web dev team, we have now turned on our 5th dyno.
All the dynos.
All the
More
dynos.
coal.
Turn on the 5th dyno. And I asked Matt Grill, who has actually got his hand on the slider. I said, "Can you make a physical dial, just like maybe a big valve, and a sound,
Steam coming out. The steam coming out.
Leo, that's level 1. Level 2 is you want one of those like big old timey like bridge of the ship things where you just have this big
Ching,
handle where you ching, ching, all full, answering
what
back
we
all
need.
full, Leo.
A ship's telegraph. That should say dynos on the side. All ahead, full.
Dyno factor 1, dyno factor 2.
The boilers are all fired up. The stevedores are shoveling coal as fast as they can.
And music of the immigrants in the 3rd deck still dancing and singing as if they have no idea of the calamity in the boilers.
Damn that iceberg ahead. Full speed. If everybody would just go to twit.tv now and try to, I would like to get to a 6th dyno. Can we?
How many dynos are enough?
There's an
Leo?
infinite number of dynos available, apparently.
Scotty, what
How
about
many
that?
dynos can you water?
Did you
behind, sir?
Did you see Silicon Valley on Sunday? Such a funny show. They're testing their middle out compression, and they have an event. Oh, there's a guy who just went to twit.tv in our studio audience. Thank you, sir. Well done. And their servers literally catch on fire. No spoiler there, but it's fun to watch.
Did they halt first?
Guilfoyle says, don't put out the fire. It'll break the server. Oh, it was funny. Our show today brought to you by lynda.com. If you want to know what dynos are, if you want to learn how to create a great website like the new twit.tv, this is a great place. An online learning platform, 3,000 plus on-demand video courses. See if they have, Jason, a course in Node.js. That's the front end. That's the dynos are running Node.js. Of course they do. Of course they do. Actually, if you learned Angular.js, you could then write your own website because we give you enough information in the API. So you could actually go to lynda.com, learn all you need to know, and then write a new Twit website all by yourself. lynda.com/MacBreak. We love it. It's for problem solvers, for the curious, for people who want to make things happen. Maybe you want to, I don't know, take better photos or learn to write a web app, master Photoshop, sharpen your HTML or iOS skills. It's all there. Write your own module, lynda.com. For business skills, too, you know. I sometimes give that short shrift because I'm such a geek, but Excel for Mac, tips and tricks, writing proposals, that's a course. Communicating with confidence. Soft business skills, resume making, mobile for business tutorials. They'll show you how to use your iPhone and iPad to boost your productivity at work. There's even a lynda.com course on asking for a raise. No need to sit back and wait for the raise to come to you. Go to lynda.com. It'll pay for itself. It's thousands of video courses. You can stream them on demand. You can watch them on your iOS or Android device on the go. Learn on your own schedule. Browse the course transcripts. Each course has a great transcript, so you can actually search the course and find the part you want. This is a Photoshop course. Yeah, Burt Monroy is the greatest Photoshop. Retouching and importing girl number 2 with Burt Monroy. I love it. Burt is the best. Create and save playlists of courses you want to watch. And you can do all of this for free for the next 10 days. You get your run of the place. Every single tutorial, every workshop, everything's there for free when you go to lynda.com/MacBreak. Lynda, lynda.com/MacBreak. And we thank them so much for their support. And I'm serious, by the way. We have an API on the new website. You can email API@twit.tv if you know how to do RESTful, JSON programming, and it doesn't, no language specific. If somebody's saying we need a lights out version of the live stream page, you could write your own. I really would love to see people, do their own version of the Twit website. The API is complete. Everything you see on the website comes from the public API. That means you could do it yourself too. And more information on the website at twit.tv. Just click that orange button that says Learn More, and as you scroll down, you'll see not only the explanation of why the site is the way it is, the design decisions that went into it, the great Drupal and Node programmers and Dust and SAS programmers who helped make this, who built this site from scratch over there at Four Kitchens, but also information about how to get involved with it, be a developer. No charge. I'm really, really excited about that idea. It's an open API, public API. I think of our what we do not as a web page or a podcast or an RSS feed, but really as, and sounds a little fancy, but content as a service. The idea that our content is available to you in any form you wish. Elroy is our backend. That's a Drupal backend. Somebody's asking, what's elroy.twit.tv? That you can't get into, I hope.
We'll find out.
I fervently hope that's our own in-house backend. You can't because you have to actually, well, I won't explain all the security. But anyway, the nice thing is, though, that Elroy is the entire backend workflow now goes through the Drupal part of the website to the so all of our editors, when I post content on the site, everything goes through the Drupal and then is available via API. So the website sees it, but anybody else can see it too. So you can subscribe to posts via the API, new shows, whatever. It's pretty interesting. We shall, we'll start, I got to learn it myself, and we'll start posting snippets and stuff. It's very cool. Let's see here. Andy Ihnatko, you want to start off, kick off our picks?
Yeah, Adobe just did their big annual update to the Adobe Creative Cloud package. This is, remember a couple of years ago that they switched from buy Photoshop for oh my god dollars and you own it to how about a subscription plan where we will roll out updates and bug fixes month after month after month, and we'll do a one Wrath of God update on top of that every single year. So that just dropped 2 days ago, and it's a good opportunity to renew my recommendation of their special Creative Cloud photography plan, where for $10 a month you get the full version of Photoshop, you get the full version of Adobe Lightroom, and you get all the cloud features that are very much in the same sort of vein as Apple Photos, where you can like import like the 800 pictures that you took on your vacation into Lightroom, and then overnight it will automatically sync into the cloud. And then while you're on your morning commute, when you're on the commuter rail, you can then be on your iPad, the Lightroom for iPad, and be triaging your photos, selecting things, making adjustments, things like that. But the number of tools that you get for enhancing photos go far, far beyond anything you can get with pretty much anything other than Lightroom and Photoshop. And once again, these aren't demo versions. These aren't junior editions. These are the full professional versions of it. And as far as new features that they added this time, they haven't added a lot of really huge features that amateur and hobbyist photographers can really use, but the ones that they did add are pretty cool. The marquee one is this new dehaze feature, because how many times have you taken a picture and with your human eyes you can see, when you were there you saw, oh, what beautiful clouds and a beautiful vista, what wonderful grass and beautiful rust color on the mountains, and then when you actually look at the picture, because you took this picture at like 1 p.m, there's sort of this haze, mid-afternoon haze all over everything, and it would take you like an hour of unskilled labor in order to figure out how to sort of address that. Now there's sort of an automatic magic feature that simply removes the haze from a picture, and those are the features that you get when you decide to pay $10 a month. Just things like this is not a new feature, but the magical feature of when you need to crop and zoom something, or you're assembling a panorama, or putting together a whole bunch of pictures in one, stitching together in one thing. Not only can, of course, Lightroom and Photoshop do that for you, but of course, because you took all these pictures at different angles, you don't wind up with a beautifully square picture. You wind up with something that's kind of bowed in this way. And the first time that you don't believe that this feature is going to work, but you say, okay, fine, I will select these white areas, and then I will say smart fill, and you find out that, oh, now that is filled with trees, and it's filled with grass, and it's filled with sky, and it's filled with clouds, and it looks like there's nothing, no fixes have been done whatsoever. You realize that Photoshop, you just earned your $10 for the month today. So it's not $10 a month isn't nothing, but it's a lot cheaper than buying Photoshop and Lightroom. And the fact that you get all these new features that keep coming in on a regular basis for free, and you really don't appreciate all the problems that you can solve with your pictures, all the things that you're unimpressed by, and all the things you're frustrated by when you get home and you're looking at this picture that you thought was going to be so wonderful, but it's just nothing. It's okay, but it's a snapshot, but I want to take a photograph. $10 a month will give you all the tools you need to turn that into a real photograph. And once again, the cloud features are really, really nice too. I mean, for me, the big problem is coming home with hundreds of pictures and then not having the time to triage out the 60 or 70 that are good, and then doing the fixes to the 20 or 30 that I actually want to share. But the fact is that when you can really access all of those pictures that you just imported into Lightroom on this device and get not just tools for selecting and organizing, but also making crops, making edits, and making something you can actually share right out of that app, it's just, again, time after time, it earns that $10 a month, and $10 is not a whole lot for what you're getting there.
I couldn't agree more. Such a good deal. I called the radio show was using Photoshop 7, not CS7, 7.
Yeah.
And she said
man.
won't. She said it won't install on my new computer with a 2 terabyte drive. And I said, yeah, that's because in the days of Photoshop 7, nobody had drives that big. It's confused.
I mean, it's just incredible, and it's changed a lot since then. And again, the times where you realize that, oh, I'm an idiot. I wish I had noticed that this person is standing in front of a tree, because now this tree is like kind of blocking this person. And the ability to simply, in a smart way, in a very, very few clicks, select that person, drag them from where they are in the picture to an empty spot where you would like them to be, and then it's filled in automatically. And then you decide, oh, I wish the perspective on this building, it's like this, but I wish it were like this. And again, with about 20 minutes of just telling Photoshop, here are the corners of that building, and now please pretend there's a camera. Now I'm going to move the tripod someplace else. And the entire building just moves as though you're rotating around it. And you're like, that would have taken me a lot more trouble and time than it would have taken for just a picture I want to make fun of on Twitter.
I pay $10. I told her, don't be such a cheapskate. Pay $10 a month. Get the latest version. You might like it. Serenity Caldwell, I am so sorry. I've lost my manners. I forgot you were a lady. Ladies first. I called him the guy with sideburns.
Sideburns first.
I mean, they are very nice sideburns.
They're luxuriant.
Nice to see some love for facial hair. I'm not going to pretend I didn't.
Sideburns first here at Twit. That's the way to do it. Yeah. Serenity, what do you have?
My pick this week is actually, I was lucky enough to get a review unit of the modern buckle from the fine folks at Apple, and I'm currently reviewing this. The review should go up on iMore hopefully later this week. But it has very, very quickly become my all-time favorite Apple Watch band, and I have tried on pretty much all of them now. It's also the most expensive, save for the Link bracelet of the Apple Watch bands. It's $249. But you know what? I have never worn a leather strap on a watch that I did not hate, because they're usually sweaty, or they're too heavy, or they just don't feel good on your wrist. And this thing feels like a sport band. I forget that I'm not wearing a sport band until I put on something nice, and then I'm like, oh, my watch actually matches my clothing rather than, it kind of pops out a little bit. I mean, I like wearing the white sport band, and I like wearing the black sport band, and I even like doing color combinations. But there's times and places for certain bands, and I really like the modern buckle. I liked it when I saw it at the preview, and I really like it now that I've gotten to spend some time wearing it. And also, it makes this nice little clicky sound. This is way too much fun to do. It's just a magnet like that, and you can just
it looks like it's a buckle. In fact, they even call it a buckle, but no, it's a magnet.
It is not a buckle. It looks like it. It's very pretty. Yeah. But no, there is no buckle in this unless you count the magnetic unclasping.
I think you can resize it like a quasi buckle if you want to change your wrist.
So on the inside here, this is the medium strap. These are all pretty small. But on the inside here, you've got these little individual holes, and you can just pop this forward and resize accordingly if you want to lengthen it or shorten it. And then you never have, unlike a normal buckle, you don't have to choose like a same hole every time. Once that hole's set, all you have to do is just snap it, and then it looks like it's perfectly sized for your wrist, and you don't have to worry about tucking and hiding and anything like that. It's really comfy, and it doesn't have the same kind of dig in that the Sport does when you have to tuck it under, because it's already pre-built that way. I don't know. I am really, really enjoying it. Also, the crazy thing, I didn't realize it. When I first got the leather on this, I'm like, this doesn't feel like leather. This feels I was like, this feels fake. Because what it actually is 2 thin layers of leather. And then the inside, the internals of this band, in between the outer leather and the inner leather, is this crazy space stuff that Apple stole from NASA, where they're basically like, hey, we have a great idea to make our band more durable. We're going to wrap hardcore plasticine. I forget what exactly the stuff is, but we're going to wrap it in leather. And so it's going to look like a leather band, but it's going to feel like something like the Sport band. What is it? Vectrin Weave. I don't even know what Vectrin Weave is, but it feels amazing on my wrist.
Fine Corinthian leather.
Yes. All it says
weave.
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same material NASA used to make the landing airbags for the NASA or the Mars rover spacecraft. So I have airbag material on my wrist. Sadly, I don't think that it expands to save me from falling. Save the watch.
So if you're a fan of women's roller derby on the East Coast, you can look forward to see bruises and dings on other people's faces, roughly the same size and shape as that buckle, if they've been playing the Boston teams.
Oh no.
No. You would never damage the watch that way. I'm sorry. It was a cheap joke, and I can afford cheap jokes.
It was good. You know what? All right, sideburns.
I accept that as the compliment for which it was intended.
That's Mr. Burnside to you.
That's Captain Side.
There must be something they're drinking over there at iMore. They're so into these watch bands. Renee's got 18.
It's new and shiny, Leo.
Yeah. It's all you can get,
shiny.
Right?
We're victims of our lust for new and shiny tech gadgets. And I'm not apologetic about it.
Yeah.
It's the first watch I've worn in years.
Wait till you see what we do with the iPad Pro.
Yeah.
It's going to be glorious.
What is your pick, Rene?
I have two. I wanted to quickly mention the WWDC app. It was really useful during the conference because you could quickly favorite stuff and add them to your calendars, and it would show up on your watch, and it was just glorious. But it's still a really important app because a lot of the videos that are available from the sessions are now in this app, and it goes back over the years. So whether you're new and you want to start from the beginning and see how things have evolved, or you just want to get the latest apps and you want it on all your mobile devices, the WWDC app makes it super easy to get all of those. And then I wanted to give a shout out to Fantastical. They updated right before WWDC with their watch version, and it solved this really big problem for me. And it seems silly calling it a problem, but Apple did not build in reminders.app into the watch. So if you had reminders, you could get the alerts for them, but you couldn't see them. And if there were no alerts associated, it was difficult. And Fantastical has the reminders built in, and they're very easy to access. The glance is super detailed. It's sort of what they did on the iPhone, the iPad, and the Mac, which is take an app that Apple maybe didn't do everything they could have with it and made a super great version of it. It's inverse Sherlocking, which I think Jason Snell and I agreed is called Moriartying Apple. It's just a terrific experience. And what's really great about it is they'll be able to do a native version eventually anyway. But for now, I just get all my reminders. They're just there, and I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Very nice.
Oh, and they won the Apple Design Award, and in something I don't think I've ever seen before, Fantastical, not the iOS version or the Mac version, but Fantastical writ large won an Apple Design Award this year.
It's a family.
Yeah, which was really cool.
You know, I've been going back and forth because I paid for BusyCal, and I like Busy Contacts, and I've been using it for years, and I also paid for Fantastical too, but the watch thing might put me over the top. That's
nice because they use natural. Like one of the big things we didn't really discuss during the Spotlight stuff is that all of Apple stuff is natural language now. Maybe we did discuss it, but it's just such an easy, very human way to interact. Show me documents I used last week that have Leo Laporte in them, and it just tells you. And Fantastical has always done that, and I found it a super fast way to just get things in and to find things again once I put them in.
Nice. All right, so I have a couple of things to show. First of all, I've been ordering every Type-C connection and cable I can. Monoprice has a sort of a subset. Not great. They have, they don't have an SD card reader, but they have a micro SD card reader. Everybody makes this Type-C to USB, but I found, this was actually on Amazon. It's from Jellycomb. It's kind of interesting. It's a USB, let me open it. You can see I just got these. It's a USB Type-C to Type 3 standard USB, Type 2, USB 3 though, the throughput. So he's the blue. So you can literally just put this in here, and now you've got kind of a USB connector, and that's pretty compact for travel, stuff like that. So these are $8. I'm really glad that Apple has abandoned its proprietary connectors. That's why I hope they'll do the same thing on the phone, because this is so much of a better connector than the MagSafe connector, given how much it can do. The only complaint I have is they didn't do what Google did on the Pixel and put one on each side. Then there'd be plenty of functionality available. We were seeing lots of people making docks because you don't have to license it.
Did you hear Phil Schiller's explanation, Leo?
What did he say?
It was on the talk show, and John Gruber asked him about that, and he said, well, the goal of the MacBook was to see what we could do in a completely wireless world, and then because we can't charge that way yet, we had to put one plug in, and because we're putting one plug in, we figured we'll make it as functional as possible, but we really wanted to see what the engineers could do if they had no constraints. How thin could you make it? How light could you make it? How radical could you make it? Because for them, that's how they get products moved forward, is to give people crazy challenges.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And we should plug that entire interview is now transcripted on iMore.
Nice catch by John Gruber on that. That's fabulous.
Oh, yeah. It was a fantastic interview.
Yeah.
Rene and I both went, and we're in different areas of the theater, so I didn't realize he was there at first, and I'm texting him like, do you know who John has for the talk show?
Yeah.
Is this real life?
Pretty impressive.
We're like Moltz again? No. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Pretty impressive.
Well, I wonder if he's going to get Tim next year. I wonder if this was a test flight.
I don't know if Tim is better, because we talked about that, and John and Phil Schiller have a really good banter going, and this was almost the best setup if John Gruber is going to interview an Apple executive on stage, because Johnny Ive would be great, Tim Cook would be great, but I don't know if he would have the same sort of back and forth with either of them.
Boy, if he gets Ive, I'll be very impressed. Ive doesn't do interviews. He's done a few.
Christina Warren got to talk to Tim Cook at WWDC too.
Yeah, but I think she ambushed him.
Oh no.
It wasn't planned. planned. Let's put it that way.
No, it was planned.
It was planned.
It
planned.
was.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, she said it was. She just happened to be at the Scholars event, and Tim Cook showed up.
Yeah. It was
That's
a
like
little,
the president
a little
dropping
bit of both.
by a
Yeah, exactly.
So she
McDonald's.
knew ahead of time.
Well, also, to be honest, you don't get to have a conversation like that with Tim Cook unless there is at some. I don't know if it was pre-planned or not, but there has to be a permission given.
Oh,
saying, yes, of
absolutely.
course, I will give you
I'm
their-
not saying that.
Yeah.
I,
A wink and nod and a smile.
we've all been to Apple events where there are people who don't realize that, oh, Tim is just kind of mingling. So you're not going to, if you stick a recorder in front of his face and ask him some question, there's going to be an arm on your shoulder very quickly saying that maybe
Phil
you'd
was
like
in
to
the
see the hors d'oeuvre
audience, and
table.
John just pulled him up on stage. I mean, what was he going to do?
Yeah.
It was just like that. See, the Dancing in the Dark video with Bruce Springsteen. It was the rapport was just wonderful.
The role of Courtney Cox is now being played.
And I have one other pick that actually I got from this web development. Our Matt Grill and our web design team told me about something called Lice Cap. He was sending me animated GIFs with command line commands in it. He was showing how links worked. I just showed that earlier with the new browser. And I said, how did you do that? And he said, oh, this is cool. It's called Lice Cap. It's for Windows and Mac. It's open source and freely available. And what it does is, in fact, I'll launch it here. It captures any part of the screen in a window and makes an animated GIF out of it. Now, admittedly, it's an animated GIF, so it's not going to be super incredible. I'll record this right now, and you can choose the name of the file. You can choose how many frames per second and so forth. And then once you've done that and save it out, you get an animated GIF. And this is they use it because it's very helpful. This is an animated GIF of the screen. Now, admittedly, that's not full frame. You can see how blocked the resolution is and all of that, but it's very helpful for demonstrating a bug or... So I'm going to tell everybody about this Lice Cap so that if you want to tell us about a bug on the website, if you send us an animated GIF illustrating it, that would be great. Then we could really see it in action. Very useful. Very useful. So that's Lice Cap, LICE CAP. How does this Safari work? I don't understand. Anyway, I'll figure it out one of these days. It's such a different...
See the world as a series of ones and zeros. We call this the binomial theory.
There it is. From COCOS Incorporated. I'm not going to say it out loud, but that's the site. And serving the elite consumer since 2004.
It's
Free
COCOS Incorporated.
Yeah, that's it. COCOS. Windows and Mac, open source. You're going to like the Mac version. It's a 700 kilobyte DMG. The Windows version is even smaller, 220 kilobytes. Have you had a program that was less than a megabyte recently?
Not unless Steve Gibson made it.
Not unless Steve Gibson made it. It must be it's got to be in, I wonder if it's an assembly code. That's interesting. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this fabulous edition of MacBreak Weekly. Thank you so much for being here, Serenity Caldwell, from your beautiful office. What is the name of that lamp now?
That is just a lamp. That is not HomeKit connected.
Oh, man. No,
It won't dim. I need a new
space
dimming
shuttle
lamp.
oh, man. Oh, yeah,
Space
yeah.
shuttle is in the living room.
Oh, okay. Of course it is. That's Rene Ritchie over there. He's got a space shuttle on his shelf.
I do.
Probably. I'm thinking. Thank you for being here, Rene. Read all about all of the new developments at imore.com. Both Rene and Serenity do such a great job covering.
Can I plug something quickly, Leo?
Oh, please.
We did a show on Wednesday, an episode of Debug with Guy English, of course, but also with Don Melton, who created Safari, Matt Drance, who was a former Apple developer evangelist, Ashley Nelson Hornstein from Dropbox, and Marco Armont from Overcast.
Holy cow.
If you want to hear a wide-ranging views and opinions on the event, check that out.
That is the one to listen to. I shall tune in.
Yeah, no dummies on that panel.
Yeah, sounds great. Andy Ihnatko, Chicago Sun-Times. Has your MacBook review emerged? Oh, R2D2.
R2D2 cookie jar.
So jealous. Serenity's coming to your house right now.
Me.
Yep.
Me.
We'll have a play date. No, that got postponed a little bit because I realized that there's probably 900 words that don't need to be there, and so I decided let's fix that.
You're such a perfectionist.
To my own dismay sometimes, but it will be up very, very soon.
I'll give you my short review. It's a beautiful screen. It's so light and thin and gorgeous. I love Type-C.
My review is very positive. I think it's the most exciting thing that Apple's done.
I like it more than I thought. I'm struggling a little bit with this keyboard, the shallow throwing the keyboard is still tough.
Yeah. Not a great choice as your primary machine, but if you can afford $1,300 for a shuttlecraft, for an away teams,
yeah, it is. It's your
computer.
away team, isn't it? Yeah,
it's about as good as it gets. Call it number one.
Add another $79 because you're gonna want this too. I'm sorry to say.
It's a lot nicer now that you don't have to travel with a baggie full of wireless devices and Apple TVs just to connect to VGA.
Yeah, that's true. I'm looking forward to that Kickstarter. I bought a couple of. There's some docks out already. There's, you know what? It's a real illustration of why you want to use standard ports. Already the ecosystem of Type-C ports is incredible and growing hugely.
Benefit of a standard.
Yeah,
and
standard.
It's not like the VGA connector I have for my old iPad, where it's only good for this old iPad. You will be able to get 2 or 3.
Yes.
When you get new computers, new devices, it'll be good for everything.
And as somebody's pointing out, the camera on it is terrible, but I wouldn't use that anyway. Okay. So
then don't take pictures with your computer.
Cameras like Z-Index, so do glowing Apple logos, and there is none in that MacBook.
Yeah.
It's also hard to balance it on a selfie stick. I mean, the world is full of suffering.
I think Johannes Stern could do it.
Actually, it's probably the easiest selfie stick laptop we've ever made. I like that. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We do MacBreak weekly, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. If you want to join our studio audience, it's 10 great people, something like that, 9 in the studio audience today. Thank you. Just email tickets@twit.tv. We'll make some space for you. You can also, if you want to watch live, watch on our new and improved website at twit.tv. We are going to, I know people are mad about this, but we're going to replace live.twit.tv, which is, believe it or not, a separate website. On a separate server, that will start redirecting to twit.tv/live. You'll be able to use the URL, but you're going to get the new player, sorry to say. That's just the way life is sometimes. If you don't want to watch live, on-demand audio and video, always available, twit.tv/mbw or wherever you get your favorite shows on the interwebs. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Now back to work, because break time is over.